Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to colinslaststand.com. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode 89. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined as always by Chris Wuhan Raygun. Chris, thank you so much for joining me today. Do you have the Wuhan, Chris?
No, I don't. Sadly.
Yeah. You're kind of hoping for it a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. You know?
Yeah.
It's kind of cool to be a part of something new and exciting.
Yeah. It's a new sort of novel virus that's taking over the world. And so everyone out there, stay safe. It was interesting. Some people are getting upset about this thing being called in the nomenclature Wuhan virus. Yeah. Because it indicates its native territory or where it spawned from is China. But like, there are so many viruses and illnesses named after places where they came from.
Yeah.
So I didn't really understand the outrage.
I guess because it's not called Wuhan virus.
Yeah.
So like going out of your way to like call it Wuhan virus is a little weird. But I wouldn't really consider it like all that offensive to call it. I think I'm sure I've called it that on shorthand like at least once or twice.
Yeah, I prefer calling it just the Wuhan. Just that's it. Not even virus or anything like that. And, you know, it's like the diabetes.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
The Wu flu.
The Wu flu, right. Exactly. There's a lot of different things you can call it, but it reminded me the most of Lyme disease, which is named Lyme disease because it started in Lyme, Connecticut.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that's what came to mind for me. So I was like, well, everyone's being a little offended, but because I think there are other coronaviruses. I think that's kind of the problem. But
yeah. Did you know that Ebola is named after a river? I had no idea.
Yeah.
I learned that like yesterday. I was like, what?
Yeah. I mean, I can think of a billion different things that are named after the territory. Although I think Spanish flu is a misnomer because I'm pretty sure the Spanish flu started here in the United States. So
I heard that it started in China.
Oh, did it really?
Yeah, I think it's called the Spanish flu because it just decimated the Spanish.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, that's unfortunate. You don't want that, obviously. But everyone out there, just keep washing your hands.
Yeah,
don't
wash
touch
your hands.
Face. Stay safe.
Don't be like a slob and a disgusting cretin. I think is like the key.
Cretin. Yeah, I hear you loud and clear. You got to just be mindful of what you're doing and where you're going. I mean, maybe stay home if you can from work and just don't expose yourself. The markets are collapsing anyway, so we're probably all going to be poor soon. So just enjoy what little time you might have left in this normal society before we live in a Mad Max world.
Yeah.
So please do be safe out there. And if you have any indication that you might have the Wuhan COVID-19 coronavirus, please do go to a medical professional and be safe. Chris, this is, I promise, a PlayStation podcast. We put it up each and every week. You can get it 3 days early and ad-free by going to patreon.com/colinslaststand, where 8,000 people support us. And we appreciate each and every one of you. We could not do the show without you. So come join us. You can join us for as little as like 20 or 25 cents a week. None of you are that hard up. So come join us. If you're that hard up, Chris, you might have other problems.
Is that a phrase? Hard up?
Yeah, hard up. I believe that's like, I'm hard up for money. Yeah, I think so.
I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
No, it reminds me of what my dad, there's like a old school, like blue collar saying called making your bones. You probably know that term, right?
Yeah.
And I always used to get a little uncomfortable when he said that to me, but you got to, I'd be like going to the deli in high school to work and I really didn't want to go. And he's like, you got to make your bones, like, all right, I get it, Dad, but this isn't 1920.
Well, one of my uncles would always, he would refer to talking rumors or like spreading rumors as telling tales out of school.
Out of school. Yeah. That's a good, out of school is a great term too. My brother uses that term as well. Yeah, it's a good one. And I actually hadn't heard anyone use that in a while until I was listening to, I'm a little behind on Joe Rogan. I was listening to Bill Maher, who I love, on Joe Rogan, and he used that term. And I was like, oh, that's really funny, because usually I just hear my brother Dagan use it.
Yeah.
But anyway, this is a PlayStation podcast. Each and every week we do post it. We do hope you enjoy it. If you want to be a freeloader / rabble rouser / scallywag and support us on free feeds, that's perfectly fine. That's where most of you listen to it. We allow that. Please leave us nice reviews on podcast services. Share with your friends and family, etc. We do appreciate it. And still no solution on merch. Don't know what the fuck's going on there. So we'll let you know as soon as we have more information on that. Sacred Symbols Plus rolls on. Sacred Symbols Plus, of course, is our weekly Patreon exclusive episode. We go for 60 to 120 minutes every week just for patrons at any level. Talk about things in a little bit of a deeper manner. Last week I did an episode all about economics in games and the next gen economics and what we can expect to pay and why, and took lots of questions from the audience. So hope you enjoyed that. I think this week, Chris, I'm not totally sold on this, but I think we should do one finally on Xbox Series X now that things have settled down.
Yeah.
So maybe we can talk about it, get some questions from the audience. I don't know that there's too much to talk about it, but there is a lot of interest, and we always manage to go way longer than I intend. So let's embrace it. So yeah, I think that's what we'll do. And then we're going to start getting into some Twin Breaker related episodes as well with Barry, the guy from Lilymo that's making the game, etc. And speaking of which, Twin Breaker, a Sacred Symbols adventure, comes to PlayStation 4 and PlayStation Vita March 24th. It is $9.99 cross-buy between the two platforms, 2 trophy sets. And the trophy list is now available actually on PSN Profiles and Exophase. It's in the system. Pretty surreal to see that pop up. Pretty cool. Very exciting. Pre-orders for the physical edition of the game continue on playasia.com. That's play-asia.com. $34.99 per copy. They do not come with a digital copy of the game, and they don't ship till May. But each edition of the game, PS4 and Vita, have their own unique slipcovers, physical soundtrack, physical manual, and more, like a little certificate that's numbered. Chris, we were originally, as you know, supposed to only do 1,000 PS4 versions and 1,000 Vita versions copies.
Yeah.
And we had that lifted to a more infinite number, and we passed those numbers in like 5 hours.
That's awesome.
So we really appreciate your guys' love, kindness, and support. You only have until March 19th to get your pre-order in for the physical copy if you're interested, because then we publish them and print them, and that's it. That's the end. We're never going to make them available physically on those platforms again. So
yeah,
you have been warned. All right, let's get into some of these questions, Christopher.
Alrighty.
Straw Hat Ninja wrote in, said, "Hello, gentlemen. Just a quick question about Twin Breaker. The response for the physical copies seemed very positive, and they seem to be selling very well. People like myself are also double dipping and getting the digital version as well, so we can play it on release day. My question is, has your sales expectations changed, and how do you feel about the response to pre-orders so far?" Pretty blown away by it. My overall expectation, honestly, for the game was to sell 10,000 copies of the cumulative digital and physical run, and we're already like maybe a third of the way there, and the game's not even out.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to be just fine. And we are going to start sending codes out at the end of the week to media and all of that. And we'll have codes so we can start actually playing through it. Chris is making a launch trailer for it.
Yeah.
So lots of things to be really positive about. Are you excited to see your face in the limelight, Chris?
It's strange. I don't know really how I feel about it yet. Feels like really off-putting that everybody that I know who has a PlayStation is probably going to scroll across my gross face.
It's exciting.
In some animated form.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited
cool,
about
man.
it. I got to tell you.
It's weird.
Yeah. Have you messed around with the final build at all?
Yeah. No, I've been messing around with the final build specifically to capture some footage for the trailer.
What do you think of it?
It's
you like it?
Yeah, it's good. It's interesting. It's like super weird because I feel like I'm noticing, because we've been fucking around with so many builds for so long that it's like some of the littler things that I used to pick up on that was like, oh, that's not exactly the same anymore. It's weird. You've done a lot of writing since the early ones.
That's true. Yeah, I rewrote a lot of it and also added a lot of writing. It's like probably like a 4 or 5 minute intro.
Yeah.
And then there's an ending, obviously. And then there are a lot of interstitial conversations between Chris and I, like dialogue, which I had fun with. And I think people are really going to enjoy it. And the story is not necessarily relevant to the enjoyment of the game. If you just want to play the game, it's got a new game plus and all of that. So you can play through it twice, full trophy list, as we said earlier. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm actually going to do a video, I think, at some point showing the differences between some of the builds and how the game evolved, because I think people would be interested in that. And I want to, now that this is my first time making a game, I want to give some background into how that process goes. even though I really didn't do a lot of the heavy lifting. That was all Barry, which is why we're going to do our podcast with him in a couple of weeks to talk about making the game. We're also doing a Reddit AMA the day or the week the game comes out on the PlayStation Reddit and some other stuff. So it'll be good. We're really excited about it. Jeremy Miller wrote in and said, "Hey, CNC, I don't know if you want to talk about this yet, but how did you secure an unlimited amount of Vita cartridges for Twin Breaker physical sales? If it was easy, why aren't more indie developers printing more cartridges?" This is a good question too. So this actually has to do with the fact that our publisher, who's awesome, East Asia Soft, they are in Hong Kong, and so is Play Asia, the merchant, and they are still actually able to submit an unlimited amount of orders in the Asian territory for Vita games. So if we were publishing it in the West, we would probably have no access at all to Vita copies. But since we're publishing it in a place where Vita is still somewhat alive, we can actually submit an unlimited amount of them. And that was the unique thing about working with East Asia Soft and Play Asia. Totally thrilled with working with them. They're awesome. So that's the simple answer to your question, is that we're publishing it in Asia. So if you get the physical version of the games, you'll actually have different trophy lists than the digital version. They'll be like Asian trophy lists. They'll still be in English, but
yeah.
So yeah, that's the way it works. And by the way, I want to be clear. Some people are confused about this. PS4 and Vita are not region locked, so you don't have to worry about buying it over there or anything like that. So don't sweat it.
Hey, good.
Don't sweat it at all, please. I insist that you don't
no
sweat.
And if you do sweat, wash your hands.
Yeah, gotta wash your hands. Don't touch your eyes. Don't touch your eyes. All right. Cheeky Bo wrote in and said, "Hi, CNC, longtime follower and first month as patron of this fine establishment you've built." Thank you, Cheeky Bo. "I love watching your old playthroughs of the Mega Man series back in the kind of funny days. You really bossed it and showed some great knowledge and tips on how to beat the games. I was wondering if you and Chris had discussed doing something similar with your own game Twin Breaker now on the horizon. This would give you the opportunity to discuss the game. Whoa! The mechanics and decisions that were made in creating the game. I really can't wait to play it and would love to see you guys playing it too. I've also pre-ordered both versions of the physical release. Long live the Vita. Thank you so much for incredible content and years of laughs. Please keep making Tuesdays great." We will. Chris, I'd love to see you do a Let's Play for Twin Breaker.
Yeah.
When the time comes. That would be fun.
Yeah, why not?
If we both published our own. Yeah. Fuck it. Let's do it. We'd love to see that. And then finally, in this regard anyway, Judah Bailey wrote into us. Reminds me of Justin Bailey, which I think was the secret code you would put in Metroid to, I don't know if it was like Naked or like Bikini Samus, or I don't know. I don't know. That's something to do with Metroid as far as I remember. But yeah. Judah Bailey, maybe his grandson, wrote in and said, "Hello, Coheed Colin and Cambria Chris. The upcoming release of Twin Breaker has given me the push I needed to do something I should have done a long time ago." He wrote dong. "Buy a Vita. Don't ask why I waited so damn long. I couldn't tell you why. My question to you is this. How much time do you think the digital Vita storefront has left? As I was looking into the different models, accessories, and games to buy, I naturally stumbled across many a Vita discussion thread. I noticed a handful of users speculating that the Vita store might not be long for this world. I personally don't think Sony has any reason to shut it down anytime soon, but was curious to see what you think about the store's lifespan. What are the chances it gets shut down at all? Thanks as always for the consistency and quality of Sacred Symbols, and keep breaking those twins." I don't know, man. I don't think the Vita store is going to shut down anytime in the next few years, and I don't think it might ever shut down, but we'll see. I can't say that for sure. I believe the PSP store is still alive and well.
Yeah, the PSP store is still up. We have our games coming out on PS Vita, and I think the last game to come out on PS3 was like FIFA 19 or something.
Yeah, it was. I think 2018, 2017, something like that. It was FIFA. That was the last release.
So if the PS3 store is still up, and that hasn't had a game in like a while, I don't see any reason why the Vita store would be shutting down anytime soon.
Yeah, and games are still being announced for Vita, and we'll talk about a couple of them later on. And especially in Japan, they're being released with in a fairly common schedule. So I don't know that you have to worry about that, but there are physical games too on Vita, not many anymore. But I just don't think they would do that. I think that would suck, obviously. Yeah. But I don't think they're going to do that. So don't worry about it. You don't have anything to worry about, I think, for at least a few years. There are still, again, games coming. Chris, by the way, March 3rd, we're recording this obviously well after that, but March 3rd, 2000 in Japan, PlayStation 2 came out. And so it's the 20th anniversary of the PlayStation 2. So I wanted to wish a very happy birthday to the best-selling home console of all time.
Yeah, man.
At
That's
152 million units. Yeah.
20 years.
20 years young. I'll tell you, you can almost drink. Calvin Kirstein wrote in and said, "Hey, Colin and Chris, 20 years ago last Wednesday, the PS2 was born. What are some of your best PS2 memories? Personally, I remember being absolutely blown away by the graphics on Gran Turismo 3 A-Spec when I saw it for the first time at my local EB Games, now Games store. Oh, he's British. Back in the days when they had playable consoles in video game stores, the jump from PS1 to PS2 in terms of graphical fidelity was huge, and I remember thinking at the time this was the pinnacle of gaming. How good did that rain look in MGS2? Anyway, I'm curious to hear your memories of what went on to be the best-selling console of all time. Thanks and keep up the great work." Chris, what are your PlayStation 2 memories? Do you have any fond ones?
Yeah, I have a lot. I feel like I have a lot of weird ones. I remember I remember having an inordinate amount of fun with the iToy, despite how baffling a tool it was. But I think the one that I recall the most was I remember being really excited to get one, but I had no signs of getting one because I was a child and I had no money or income. And I would go to my friend's house and play, I think it was Dragon Ball Z Budokai. It was one of the first proper 3D fighting games that I had played on the PS2, and I was pumped about it. And then I had found shortly before Christmas a copy of Budokai in my mom's drawer in her office desk. And I remember thinking, "Oh shit, I have a PS2 probably." And it was really rough pretending to be surprised.
Yeah.
But it was a nice memory.
Yeah, there's a lot to love about PS2. I've said many times, and I think people take serious umbrage with it, but PS2 is probably my least favorite PlayStation console. I love PS1. I mean, I love them all, but
yeah.
PS1 was just a really paradigm-changing console for me in the 90s, and PS2, I think, was just competing so much with... Because this was when I had money for the first time in my life. So...
Yeah.
It was competing with Dreamcast, and it was also competing with GameCube and Xbox later on. PS2 was the second console I got at launch. I actually got a Dreamcast at launch. That was the first time I ever bought a console at launch, and that was really exciting for me. But PS2, I got at launch in October of 2000 when it launched in the US. And the launch library was really weak, as I think a lot of people will remember. But there were a lot of really unique and interesting experiences to be had on it. Even ones that people make fun of today, like Fantavision, and Summoner and Smuggler's Run. These aren't exactly well-remembered games, but they felt different. And I agree with what he was saying, that this felt like a true jump from one console to the next. And I've actually gone back and looked at some PS2 games, and they look a lot better, some of them, than I remember them looking. So,
oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So a really cool console, and obviously the DVD player functionality was huge. But yeah, it's a incredibly famous console. It got a lot of people in the PlayStation. So very happy birthday to the PlayStation 2.
Yeah.
And Chris, before we get into what we're playing, Austin Smith's worried about you. He has a quick inquiry. He says, "Chris, are you okay? You seem to be sick every week. Do you have AIDS?" He wants to know if you have AIDS. That seems a little extreme, but are you well? Are you doing okay?
Yeah, it's annoying because I feel like I just always have symptoms, but I'm never sick. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know what the hell it is. It's just because I'm allergic to a lot of shit that apparently keeps finding its way around me. Right now, allergies are kicking my ass. And I know it's allergies specifically because my eyes have that little burning sensation that I equate so heavily with pollen, which I thought I could escape here in the desert, but I guess not.
No, certainly not.
Guess the joke's on me.
It is. The joke is on you. Goddamn, godforsaken pollen ruining Chris's life. And also, Chris, you had a problem with your PlayStation 4.
Yeah.
Erasing what did it format your console or something?
I have no idea. I woke up and I was like, I'm doing the podcast today. I haven't really had a chance to play anything aside from Twin Breaker this week for the trailer. So I was like, I'll do a quick little gaming session before the podcast, so I have something that I could say that I've played. And it said, I forget what it said, but it was like, oh hey, it put me up to the boot screen, and it was like, oh, something's wrong, and I was like, oh cool, that's so sick. And it asked me to download the firmware update onto a USB drive and initialize the console from a USB stick for no reason. I guess maybe my power went out last night and I didn't notice. But I still don't.
Yeah,
I still don't even understand how that would do that. But well.
Yeah, that's weird.
So I got to re-download everything I own, which is actually fine because honestly, my PS4 was getting a bit full of shit that I was never playing anyway.
Yeah, it'll force you to re-examine what you actually need on the console. But that's too bad to hear. I'm sorry to hear that.
As long as it's not bricked, you know.
Yeah, no, definitely.
It didn't pull a 360 on me.
No,
which is good.
No death. So, yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, but the PS4 is a finicky console. It always has been. Maybe the PS5 will be less so, but let's get into the games that we are playing, and I'll leave it to you, Chris, to begin. It says you're playing the Final Fantasy VII Remake demo.
Yeah, that was really
How was it?
The only time I had time. The only time I had to play really was about a demo's worth, but I played just before we started recording. Actually, I'm not technically done with it. I think I have maybe I'm on the timer section where you arm the bomb and you're trying to escape the facility, but I actually really like it. I wasn't really expecting to have much of because these games always really have a tough time jiving with me, specifically just because man, it's so Japanese and Cloud looks so strange to me as a human male, you know? And I'm not exactly used to the aesthetic, I think, but the game plays really well, and I actually really like the way it flows. The music is still amazing. I'm looking forward to it a lot more now than I was before. Because I feel like before I was like, oh, this is definitely a game that I will play on some level. I'll definitely play a little bit of it, but I think it's a game that I might actually want to full on finish, which isn't necessarily the case for most things that I play.
Sure. I'm avoiding it personally because
fair.
I just want to go in to the game fresh. Some people have made fun of me for this because I have beaten and platinumed Final Fantasy VII, beat it in 1997, so obviously I'm familiar with it, but it is a different game, and so I want to see it with my own two eyes without being spoiled one way or the other by this particular demo. We were going to get to this question a little later, but I'll get to it now since it is timely. Jordan Giaza wrote in, or Giaza, says, greetings and salutations, C squared. With the recent release of the Final Fantasy VII Remake demo, it quickly became the top-selling video game on Amazon shortly after its release. My question is, with the success of this trial, do you think more big games will release the first hour of a game as a boost or a demo to boost sales? This is actually a fairly common technique, Jordan, historically for Sony to do with Square to do, going back to the Squaresoft days with Final Fantasy games. There was an early demo for 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, and 15, depending on where you were able to get it. Sometimes you had to buy a game. I think Final Fantasy VII's demo came with Tobal number 1. I don't remember what Final Fantasy 8 or 9 came with. 10 came with the Bouncer, as far as I remember. So they've actually done a really good job historically of giving demos to people to play. So that's worth noting. But what I'm interested in with this, Chris, is I'm glad you liked it. A lot of people didn't like this demo from what I could tell and might have been turned off from the game by it. So I don't know. It seems like it did really nicely for it in terms of sales. So maybe it's just a loud minority. But I was surprised by how many people played it and were like, no, this isn't right at all. And I don't know exactly what they were expecting because I felt like Square Enix was being pretty forthright about what the game was, which is not what it used to be. It's something more modern. And I was reading an interview with Nomura or someone where they were talking about how they needed to modernize the game. Like that was their only choice, was to modernize it. But did you enjoy the combat and everything in the game? And obviously the aesthetic's beautiful. But what did you think of actually playing it?
I enjoyed it quite a bit. I didn't want it to end, which is a good sign to me, because most games that I play that are like this, or like most games that require even a modicum of patience for me, it's like, I'll get to it later, whatever. But I was kind of bummed that I knew that I was kind of approaching the end, and I am excited about it. I could see, having played a little bit at least of the original game, why there are people who are probably a bit purist about it, who probably might not like the direction, because it is a little bit more, I don't want to say Devil May Cry necessarily, because it's not like stylish or anything, but there is definitely a higher emphasis on real-time combat than there was. The camera can be a little bit finicky when you're playing as Barrett and you're trying to aim at shit that's kind of above you. That is one thing I noticed that was a little finicky, but overall, as an experience, I I definitely felt sucked into it. Like, they did a really good job of selling the mood and like selling the world in a very short amount of time.
Yeah.
I think it's good. I do think it's going to be contentious because this is one of those, this is a very important game as far as video games as a medium go. Like, this is probably one of the few cherished gems across everybody's minds. So like, a modern interpretation is almost by definition blasphemous. But I don't know. I think if you look past the nostalgia goggles, I think it's pretty good.
I'm curious about it. I'm open-minded and confident that it's going to be good. I wasn't confident for a long time, as a lot of people know, until they really explained it and showed what they were trying to do. And yeah, I agree with you. I think the safer route, actually, in the interview I was reading, they said that if they did go the safe route and just made the game again, basically, as it were, they would have just outsourced it. But it's important to note that the game was outsourced originally, and the game was taken away from its original developer and brought in-house at Square Enix. So something did go wrong at some point. But I am curious of how it's received, how it does critically. I'm excited to play it, certainly.
Yeah.
And I think remaking Final Fantasy VII is a win-less situation in some sort of manner, because you either do it and modernize it and people get mad, or you keep it the same and people get mad. So I think, all things being equal, modernizing it is probably the right move, because the original still exists and you can go back and play it. So
yeah, exactly.
And you can play it on the same console you're going to play this on. So there's no reason to really be that upset about it. I do understand that people are there's a lot of consternation about it being split into what seems like thirds, which sucks.
Oh, yeah.
But
yeah.
Who knows how long this is going to take to actually finish.
That is annoying. And there is a possible argument to be made that, like, if I like it, that could be a problem, because I really don't I don't like Final Fantasy really that much at all. So maybe, your average fan of Final Fantasy might feel a little bit put off by something that might appeal to somebody like me. It would be like if like Call of Duty pros came out of 343 Industries and were like, I really like this new Halo, I'd be like, oh no.
Right. Right.
So that's a possibility, but I don't know. I think, like you said, the old game still exists and it's still just as playable. This is just a version of Final Fantasy that, I guess, to me, feels a lot more like something that I could get involved with, as opposed to like the old turn-based style, which really, really required a lot of pulling to get me involved. So this is probably the version of the game that I'm most excited to play through.
The thing about Final Fantasy at this point, too, 34 years or so, 33 years into its history, is there's so many different meanings of Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think it would be weird if there was someone that literally liked all of them.
Right.
Because I think they changed so much. I really can't stand Final Fantasy X, as people know, and I can't stand really Final Fantasy 13. So I have these kind of blind spots in my own fandom. So I think it's an ever-evolving franchise. It doesn't even really mean anything anymore. That's the one thing I do respect about Dragon Quest, which I was making fun of a lot as I was playing it, but it really has remained true to itself, with the exception of 10. It really did remain the same, for better or for worse. It's like you can recognize a Dragon Quest game, but I don't really know the connective tissue between like Final Fantasy VI and Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy X and Final Fantasy 13. These games aren't connected at all, except for they have like, Chocobo in them and they have the same name. So anyway, speaking of Final Fantasy, I've been messing around a little bit with Final Fantasy VIII as I try to continue my quest to beat 12 JRPGs this year. I only got to play it for a couple of hours before I got distracted by some other more imminent stuff, but I remember why I don't like this or didn't like this game. I remembered pretty quickly. And in even reading about, because I obviously had it when it came out. It came out right when I started 10th grade. And obviously we were all over it in my friends group. But it's a weird game in that it really encourages you not to level up and not to grind. And, you're drawing magic from enemies, and magic is almost like an item. And there are guardian forces, which are these things you kind of equip and augment your character with. It's definitely different. And I respect the hell out of that. I think that's super cool, but I'm going to play it all the way through, but I'm not excited about it. I kind of wish I just went into Final Fantasy IX instead, but I wanted to, because I love Final Fantasy IX, but I wanted to get through this first. So I'll have more to say about that in the coming weeks. I've still been messing around with Gambar Super Strikers on Vita, which is the turn-based strategy soccer game. It's really hard. So I'm only able to do it like, one mission or one game a night really while I'm sitting in bed listening to podcasts or whatever. But I like it. It's fun. And I'm messing around again with Arkham Asylum, which I downloaded on PS4 in preparation for a knockback episode as voted on by the audience. So I'll save most of what I have to say about that game for knockback. But I have to say that, and this happens every once in a while, it happened to a lesser extent with Vanquish, where I just started remembering all of this stuff about playing this game, about the boss fights, like the Bane boss fight and the Scarecrow boss fight. And it's just funny, like, that these things are just buried in your mind, like this most menial shit about anything, really. It's just buried somewhere inside you, because I hadn't played Arkham Asylum since it came out in 2009. It's been longer having played that since playing Vanquish. So it still holds up, and it's really cool on PS4. It's a little expensive on PS4. I think I paid $20 for it or something like that. So I think that's a little too much, but it was more expensive when it came out, actually, in 2016 on PS4. But nonetheless, that's what I've been messing around with. I think I'll jump back into it after we're done here and kind of just get through it. Thinking about trying to platinum it, but the platinum is really tough in Arkham Asylum. I don't think I'm good enough to get it. It's actually very similar to Vanquish. It has these challenge modes that are just fucking hard. And I started messing with the Vanquish challenge modes just to see, and I'm like, nah, fuck this. And with Arkham Asylum, you have to like basically earn these stars.
Oh yeah.
By like getting combos and doing all these things and earning points. And there are two challenges in particular that people like. I totally got psyched out just reading about them. Reading about them on trophy sites and on YouTube, reading the comments, people talking about how they wanted to throw their console out the fucking window and stuff. It's like, I shouldn't have read this stuff, because sometimes you do go into these purportedly really difficult scenarios and you beat them, and they weren't as hard as people make them out to be. But I also recognize, we talked about this, me and my brother, on the Cuphead episode of Knockback, that I'm just not very good at games anymore. Like I feel like my skill at games is actually actively diminishing. Like I'm losing a step. I don't know. There's just something happening. I don't know if it's age or whatever, but I was way better at games when I was like 10 than I am right now. I used to be able to beat ridiculous games that I probably couldn't even beat now, like Kid Icarus and shit like that, where I wouldn't stand a chance playing some of those games now. Ninja Gaiden. So
it's tricky. It's definitely tricky, because like when you're a kid, you just have so much time to learn to be adept, especially when you just don't have a lot of games. Because like when I was a kid, I didn't have that many games. Like I eventually accumulated things for like birthdays and Christmas, but like after Christmas, I had like maybe like 2 new games, and I would spend the whole year just playing those games and getting really good at them.
Yeah, I'm the same. Yeah, you're exactly right. There was just something about the earlier era of games too that were just a little more manageable. I like the idea of challenge modes and stuff to give players more bang for their buck, but I guess it annoys me as a trophy purist to have them locked in, where it's like, I can beat the game on hard, that's no problem. I can do all these missable trophies and collectibles, but like, it's just that one thing. That's what it was in Vanquish, where I'm like, this sucks, because it's just this one thing that's stopping me from getting the trophy, the platinum. But that's really neither here nor there, I guess. But then it's like, why did I do all this other stuff in the game? Why did I beat it on hard? Why did I get all the collectibles? I don't know. Because I wanted to, I guess. As a professional podcaster, not to mention an amateur musician and diehard music fan, audio quality is vitally important to me. When I listen to my beloved 311, I want to hear Chad Sexton's crisp snare drum coming through perfectly. And if I segue over to a podcast like Sam Harris's, I want to hear his creamy academic voice pulsating into my ears at just the right pitch. If you're an audiophile like me, Raycon's wireless earbuds may just be for you, especially if you want to hear me sound most robust and, dare I say, at my absolute sexiest on both Sacred Symbols and Knockback. Raycon combines 2 essential factors, quality and price. Their earbuds start at about half the price of other premium brands, and yet their sound quality is just as top-notch. Their newest model, the E25, is especially appealing, since it has 6 hours of playtime per charge, seamless Bluetooth pairing with your device, and more. The charge time is especially solid, since we drone on and on this show, do we not? Celebrities from the weed-puffing Snoop Dogg to the guitar-strumming Melissa Etheridge are fans of the Raycon brand, and as the name suggests, Raycon was founded by none other than singer, songwriter, actor Ray J himself. If you want to try Raycon's premium earbuds for yourself, head on over to buyraycon.com/symbols to net yourself 15% off your first order. That's right, 15% off. Again, go to buyraycon.com/symbols. That's buyraycon.com/SYMBOLS and begin your journey into the world of higher sound quality at a better price. All right, Chris, let's get into the news. There's actually quite a bit of it this week, including some substantial things to talk about, beginning with number 1. Sucker Punch's eagerly anticipated PlayStation 4 exclusive game Ghost of Tsushima finally has a release date, and it's sooner than any of us expected. The team's samurai game comes out on June 26th, not even a month after The Last of Us Part 2 launches. The game stars a character named Jin Sakai and takes place in the 1270s during an invasion of Japan that actually took place in that decade from the Mongols. Sony released a brand new trailer alongside the release date announcement if you'd like to check it out. I didn't watch it. I refuse to see anything else about the game. Pre-ordering the game both at retail and via the PSN can net you a Jin avatar, a so-called mini soundtrack, a dynamic theme, and some other goodies. If you pre-order the deluxe edition on PSN, you get a skin set which gives players a new horse, saddle, mask, sword, and armor set, as well as some in-game items, a digital art book, and more. While the standard version costs $59.99, that version will cost $69.99 or your local equivalent. If you want to get crazy with the retail versions, you have more options than just the boxed edition. The special edition, which costs $69.99, comes with in-game skins and items, a technique point to spend in-game, director's commentary, and more. The exorbitant $169.99 collector's edition, however, comes with a physical recreation of the mask Jin wears in the game, war banners, in-game skin and item sets, a physical art book, a physical rendition of the world map, and more. Sucker Punch is a Washington state-based studio founded in 1997 and was purchased by Sony and made a full first-party team in 2011. They're best known for their 2 PlayStation exclusive franchises, Sly Cooper, which ran from 2002 to 2005 across 3 games under their tutelage, and Infamous, which ran from 2009 through 2014 across 3 games and 2 major expansions. This will be their first release since 2014. Brian Chai wrote into us, Chris, and said, "Hello, Moriarty-sama and Ray-Gun-san. Sucker Punch lived up to their name and stunned all of us with a release date for Ghost of Tsushima. 2 questions. Thoughts on it releasing so close to The Last of Us Part 2, and what are the chances it gets delayed? Thanks for the content, you beautiful pair of gaijin." Oh, that's not very nice. Chris, what did you think about all of this? This was a huge surprise, and I am shocked by the release date, personally. But what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think June is a really great time to release a video game, especially one like this. But this proximity to The Last of Us is really, really bad. I don't think that's a wise choice at all. I would have maybe pushed it at least like maybe into July or something. Just to give, I feel like The Last of Us is one of those games that's going to need to breathe for a bit. And it's going to be talked about for quite a while, I think, after it comes out. So I think just having a new Sony first-party game that, I mean, it's not exactly the same kind of game, but it's, you know, it's like a realistic, like gritty third-person action game by another PlayStation studio, and I feel like you'd ideally want as much room between you and the last one. I don't know. This is a little weird for me.
Yeah, I think it's strange too, and I gotta say, I had a guest spot on another PlayStation podcast called The PlayStation Experience, and we talked about this, and I said that I can't help but read this release date as them not being confident in this game. And I don't know if that's true or not. I think Sucker Punch is a great studio. I happen to really love Infamous, and I like Sly Cooper too. I think that they've really delivered some great experiences, but this is weird because I don't quite understand what the point is of releasing it at this time. If you could just, like you said, give it a little bit more room to breathe, I think that's really wise. There's no doubt in my mind that The Last of Us Part 2 is going to be a critical hit and a commercial smash hit and really distract people. Now, there is something to be said about how Factions, the multiplayer mode, is not going to be in The Last of Us Part 2, and that's going to be a separate game later on. So maybe people won't be as distracted by it as they otherwise would have been, since big fans will have gotten through the experience in that month. But like you said, it sucks up so much oxygen in the ecosystem that there's nothing to really be said, or there's a little room to say anything about Ghost of Tsushima. And I really question the wisdom of doing this to Sucker Punch's game unless you are trying to hide something. So I don't know. I don't get it at all. So I think Sony's been pretty good about managing its catalog of games. I think 2018 especially was a really good staggered year with Detroit Become Human and God of War and Spider-Man kind of giving each other room to breathe. This is strange because these are the two big guns this year, other than whatever is going to be exclusive on PS5, if it even comes out this year. Now, who the fuck even knows? And so, yeah, I'm with you entirely. And Brian here does ask in the comments, chances it gets delayed. My first reaction to this is there's no chance it gets delayed. And then my second reaction to it was it might, because maybe they wanted to just get this out there to start getting pre-orders and start getting some money for the game and all of this on Amazon and on their various retail or through their various retail channels. And then maybe they have every intention of pushing it, which does happen. I mean, games are sometimes clearly announced with the intention of delaying them. And it does happen somewhat often, but we are pretty close here to the release date. So I don't know. I can't help but read into this as something negative. I don't want to believe that because I want to believe Ghost of Tsushima is going to be great. And I think it looks awesome and I'm excited to play it and I think I'll enjoy it. Sucker Punch has never released something that I didn't like, but I don't know. I don't know. If I were at Sucker Punch, I'd be pretty pissed off about this. So that's out of their hands, obviously, because it's Sony published. But yeah, Brian, I think that you're right to ask those questions and we'll see how it all goes down. Although I will say that I'm more excited about The Last of Us Part 2 than I am Ghost of Tsushima. I think that's the case for a lot of people, which is why maybe the game should have been inversed if you were going to release them so close.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think, I don't know if I would be that dire about it. I don't know if they're hiding anything. I think it's probably still going to be a great game. I do think it really is questionable.
The obvious thing, I guess, is in thinking about it, they might just be trying to get the stuff away from PlayStation 5, but I don't know. Like, these are all going to be PlayStation 5 games too. And even if you released it in August, it's still not that close to PlayStation 5. There were PS3 exclusive games that were coming out pretty close to the wire. People will remember that Beyond Two Souls came to PS3 in October of 2013 and PS4 came out in November. And Gran Turismo 5 came out after PS4 came out on PS3.
Yeah.
So it's not like these things are unprecedented, or Gran Turismo 6, I think it was. So it's not like these things are unprecedented in the course of Sony first and second party games. So yeah, I think this is questionable. And I don't think it's crazy. Chris is probably right. It's probably all going to be fine, but I don't think it's crazy to say, like, are you hiding something? I don't know. I just don't know. All right, number 2, this is also really big news, Chris. Sony Santa Monica, the first party team most notably behind the God of War franchise and the 2018 critically acclaimed revival of the series on PS4, has lost a key member of its team. Shannon Studstill, the longtime head of the team since the late PlayStation 2 era, has left to head a new Google-funded team, leaving a void that will be filled by another longtime Sony Santa Monica employee, Yumi Yang. Studstill was the producer of Sony Santa Monica's very first game, the PS2 racer Kinetica, and also acted as the producer of the original God of War on PS2, released in 2005. She rose to the role of executive producer of God of War 2, which, by the way, God of War 2 also came out after PS3 came out, only on PS2, and then became the head of the team during the development of God of War 3. Studstill was leading Sony Santa Monica during its renaissance as a so-called XDev team, a studio that would help produce and guide timed and outright exclusives being made for PlayStation platforms, including games like Journey, Sound Shapes, The Order 1886, and more. She made her start as an artist in the industry in the 90s. Yumi Yang actually had her start in the industry at the Japanese Sony-owned racing studio Polyphony, where she was producer of Gran Turismo 4. She was an associate producer on the original God of War and God of War 2, worked production of God of War 3, and then slid into leadership roles for God of War Ascension, the oft-forgotten PS3 game from 2013, and 2018's God of War as well. Sony Santa Monica has since abandoned its XDev production distractions and is back to working wholly on at least one AAA project, which is assumed to be God of War 2 on PS5. What did you think of this? I actually knew Shannon Studstill personally. I met her many times. She was a really interesting woman, really smart, and had a lot to say, very candid, had a lot of interesting talks with her. I was really shocked to see her leave because it seemed like she worked really hard to get Sony Santa Monica to the point it is now. I mean, Sony Santa Monica was in an existential crisis not 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
They canceled their space game that they were making for a long time, 3 years into development, lost tens of millions of dollars on that. God of War Ascension was not well received at all from the audience. didn't sell well, and they really had to put their noses down and make a great game in God of War and the revival on PS4. So it was really interesting to see her leave. Now, money can court anyone away, and I'm sure she's making a lot of money going to Google, but I guess the biggest thing you could read into this, Chris, is that maybe Google has an intention of supporting Stadia since they're investing into a studio like that. But what did you make of her exit from the team?
Yeah, that's the biggest takeaway to me, was that she was leaving for clearly a Stadia project, which I don't know if anybody's really been following Stadia, but it's really not looking good at all.
No.
So it's just baffling. It's interesting, at the very least, that you would leave something that is presumably on track to be kind of automatically well received to go work on something that might pay more, but also is just on this platform that everybody just sort of unanimously doesn't like. Although maybe that might be why she's there. She could be there specifically because, hey, you turned around Sony Santa Monica pretty well. Or you had at least helped do that. So maybe you could do that for us, please.
Yeah, I think that could be it. I'm sure that, again, they're paying her very well. I think that her line of thinking too is she is like, I'm Shannon Studstill. If this doesn't work out, I'll find a way back into wherever I want to go. I mean, she could probably go back to Sony if she wanted to. So yeah, it's weird. It's a weird one. Yumi Yang is an interesting replacement for her because it's another female, which I think is interesting. Sony has really empowered female heads of studio. One of the heads of Guerrilla is also a woman. So it's interesting to see that from that perspective. I think that's neat. But yeah, I was shocked by this, especially just because of where she's going, because it's not really a lateral move. She's going to an unfounded and untested studio, making something, like you said, for a platform that seems to be dying pretty quickly, unless what Google plans to do what Amazon was planning to do for a long time, which is maybe make games for other platforms. And that's the thing I'd be most interested in. I was actually going to message her and ask her, but I'm sure she wouldn't be able to talk about it on the record. Just on, is Google going to just make a game for Stadia, or are they going to become more of a publisher of big AAA games that could scale to other platforms? Because that's kind of what Amazon has been trying to do pretty fruitlessly for several years. They did make Lumberyard or whatever, their engine.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, I wish Shannon the very best. I didn't anticipate this because you would assume Sony would have done what they needed to do to keep her. So I can only imagine that the money coming from Google is substantial. I think Shannon was already a millionaire before this, but I think now she's going to be quite comfortable indeed. And you do need that money in Santa Monica, I know, because I lived there. So it's completely heinous.
That's ridiculous.
So yeah. So congratulations to her. We'll certainly eagerly see what she has to do next. And another piece of big news, Chris, and I want to talk about this in conjunction with the Ghost of Tsushima news, even though they seem unrelated. I think they're intimately related to each other. The Last of Us is getting a TV series, and it's coming to HBO, according to an exclusive from The Hollywood Reporter. The series is set to retread the original game's plot and may also veer into The Last of Us Last of Us Part 2's plot, though none of us really know what that's all about yet, as the game won't be launched on PS4 until May 29th. To lead the project, HBO brought back Craig Mazin, who you might recognize as the man behind HBO's mega popular miniseries Chernobyl. But what's more interesting is that Neil Druckmann himself, current VP of The Last of Us developer Naughty Dog and the writer and creative director of both the original Last of Us and its sequel, will act as the series' writer and executive producer. Other executive producers include Evan Wells, who is the president of Naughty Dog, and Carolyn Strauss, who is the executive producer of the aforementioned Chernobyl, but who perhaps is most importantly known as the executive producer of the Game of Thrones for the duration of its run, the Game of Thrones series. HBO is working in conjunction with Sony Pictures Television, as well as Sony's newly created PlayStation Productions team, to bring this series to HBO, and it does act as a replacement for the previously planned film adaptation of The Last of Us. While Sony has already spoken about its intent to bring Twisted Metal to life with the TV series via PlayStation Productions, the company has confirmed that more television shows using PlayStation IP will be coming, though through which partner or partners remains to be seen. Pete writes in, Chris, and says, hey, CNC, seems like Chris accidentally willed another thing into existence. Last of Us, the TV series. Time to put a gag on that, man. Why would you want to gag him? It seems like Chris is bringing things that you guys want into existence. We were just talking about this.
I am a herald.
Yeah, you are. That's right. You are a herald. Proclaiming things that are to come.
Yeah.
What did you make of this announcement, Chris? This is a pretty interesting one, not only being partnered with HBO, but making The Last of Us into a series with someone at the helm that is responsible for one of HBO's biggest series in many years in Chernobyl, plus having Neil Druckmann's buy-in, who famously didn't have a lot of buy-in with either the Last of Us movie project or the Uncharted movie project. So what do you think of all of this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want this. I don't want this at all. But I stand by the opinion that if you're going to do something like this, if you really are hell bent on turning your video game IP into a television show, then or like a live action media property or some form of other kind of entertainment, then I think a television show is the best way to do it. I do question the reason as to why they would want to retread the story of the first game, because it seems like that's what they're doing. A friend of mine who works for Destructoid, who does like a video series for them, actually brought up a good point where he's like, this kind of feels unintentionally like those Disney live action remakes, where it's like there's very clearly a better version of this story that already exists. So why would you need a kind of afterthought live action version to accompany it? I really don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and people have brought up this before, and we've talked about this on the show, that I think especially with the success of The Witcher on Netflix and how that also started selling copies of the games like gangbusters again, as if it was a new game, and created all this new revenue for CD Projekt and all the associated production studios, that this is something that's going to be irresistible. And yeah. I think that we have to see how it all goes. I'm of the same mind where I just don't think we need this. If you wanted to do something with The Last of Us, which I think is reasonable enough, that do something else.
Right.
People have to remember that, with the exception of the very beginning of the original Last of Us, we don't even know what happened between the start of the outbreak and 20 years into the story. So there's all of this space to explore. Even if you wanted it to be about Joel, it would have been cool to see, like, well, what did Joel do 5 years after the outbreak? What did Joel do 10 years after the outbreak?
Yeah.
We kind of learn a little bit about that through people we know in the game, and they refer to those times that were supposed to be really violent and really horrible. And so I don't know why you would want to retread the specific Joel and Ellie plotline when it's never going to be done better than it is in The Last of Us, and never going to be acted better than it was acted by Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson, which I think is a relevant point as well. So
yeah,
I think they're setting themselves up for some disappointment from that perspective, but I don't mind there being a Last of Us TV series. I'm just like, let's talk about, focus on the Fireflies, focus on the fall itself and what happened in the weeks after it all went down. And there's like all sorts of really interesting shit they could have done. And so I think that's the major mistake, is like, we don't need to see Joel and Ellie's story again. We can see there's got to be a million other stories to tell, especially with Neil Druckmann involved. There's got to be so many other stories to tell in this world. So
yeah,
that I think is an error, a serious error.
That I think it really is the main point of contention, because you already have the material there, and there's so much. Whenever you have a world that is rich, it's always a shame whenever you see like a live action adaptation of anything in that world and it doesn't actually go into the lore of that world at all. Or it just chooses to redo the shit that you've already seen. It just feels kind of lazy. And I'm sure it probably won't be. I'm sure they're probably going to put a lot of effort into producing the damn thing. Like, making a TV show isn't easy by any means. But I don't know, man. I think you could. There are better ways to utilize that IP for a live action TV format than just doing the same thing again.
Yeah, I hope that they change course on this, but I doubt that they will. Like, are they going to start with, and I'm going to spoil The Last of Us here. It's been 7 years, so, but are they going to start with the same intro where Joel's daughter dies and then fast forward 20 years and be in Boston and leave from there and then go meet Marlene and figure out you have to take Ellie? I mean, is it going to be really the same thing? Like, I don't know. It's just, that's so boring.
Can you imagine, though, if it's the same thing, but kind of different? I feel like that would be even worse.
Yeah, because then it would feel like fan fiction or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Then it like ruins the integrity of the world building that the game laid. Oh man, you can't win, man. You can't win here.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm thrilled that Neil is involved in it. This is Neil's story. This is Neil's world. He made this. And Evan Wells is really a great and smart person too. And him being involved gives me a lot of hope. But I think that they should really think carefully about what they're doing here. And I will say, I brought up earlier about the connection to Ghost of Tsushima. The connection here is that these things were announced the same day. And I can't help but think that that's another slight against the Ghost of Tsushima release date. Like, this wasn't a story that was like broken on Kotaku. This was something that they had interviews lined up. There was an embargo lined up for this. They had talked to people and they were ready to go the same exact morning that Sony released the Ghost of Tsushima release date. I just can't help but see the downside to that. The downside to that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. If you really believed in Ghost of Tsushima, number one, why are you releasing it 4 weeks after The Last of Us Part 2, arguably the biggest PS4 exclusive that will ever exist? And number two, why would you announce the release date at the same time that you're announcing a Last of Us TV show on HBO? I don't know, man. I'm sorry. I can't help but look at this and be like, there's something seriously wrong here.
Sony's been particularly bad about messaging in the last couple months with the way they handle Concrete Genie and the news of PlayStation 5 breaking at the same time. I feel like they've been going on this weird path of, we're just going to accumulate a lot of like a handful of things to say and then just say all of it on the same day instead of just letting information trickle out, which is kind of the way that Microsoft has been playing it. And I think it's been a far smarter way to play it than just, hey, here's like 3 pieces of news, all of which kind of disrespect everything that's being announced in some way. Just feels really weird.
It is weird. They might have some sort of data, for all we know, that says like a high tide raises all boats. When you talk about PS5, people become more interested in the brand, then they see Concrete Genie exists, and maybe when you announce The Last of Us Part 2 or The Last of Us TV series and Ghost of Tsushima, people are reading about both. That's entirely possible, but I doubt it. I mean, that doesn't pass the logic test or the smell test at all for me.
If that was the case, then why would they pull out of E3? The whole argument of E3 is like, oh, it's so crowded, it's so much attention drawn to the same space, we want to stick out.
That's a good point.
Like, it seems,
I really don't know.
It seems completely antithetical.
Sam Christensen wrote into us and said, hello, Colin and Chris. I'm sure every inquiry will be about this topic today, but what are your thoughts on The Last of Us being made into an HBO show rather than a movie? Do you still stand by your ethos of, if you're going to have to do it to our precious content, make it a TV show, or do you think this game is too sacred to touch? Do you think HBO is right for the job, or would you have rather seen it go to the likes of Netflix or Hulu? Thanks, and Tuesdays/Fridays. Thanks, Sam. What do you think about HBO as the partner? I actually feel like this is a perfect partner for this game. It actually gives me a little bit of hope that we have people from Chernobyl and people from Game of Thrones involved, as well as the people from Naughty Dog. So that was actually the most pleasing part of this announcement to me personally, Chris, was the HBO inclusion. But do you think that it could have done better somewhere else?
No, I agree. I think HBO's had a particularly good track record of making really solid shows that do kind of stand out. I think even the shows that are on HBO that don't really break out into the mainstream, I think are pretty damn good. And I think specifically if it had gone to Netflix or Hulu, I'd be a lot more worried. Because Netflix, as good as some things are, like the new Castlevania season is amazing. But Netflix also just makes a lot. Like, they just sort of throw money at everything and just sort of publish whatever. So there's a lot of trash that Netflix makes, as well as like some of the few hits that they do. So like, I feel like HBO has like a far more consistent quality record. I feel like I can't even name something that Hulu has. I think the only reason I have Hulu is to watch Seinfeld and Always Sunny. So I'm glad it did. I'm definitely glad it didn't go to Hulu. But if this was going to happen anyway, HBO is probably the best place for it to be. Specifically, not only because, HBO is just really quality programming, but also just because they have a tradition of making really good gritty shit also. Like, and I feel like they could serve the violence of The Last of Us pretty well.
Yeah, Hulu has some originals, but the only one that I care about is Handmaid's Tale, which is great. But yeah, and you're right about Netflix. Netflix spends, I think, like several $1 billion a year on content, which is fucking nuts.
And a lot of it is garbage.
Yeah, there are some really bad shows on there. Like, they funded season 3 of Designated Survivor, and that show is terrible. Like, there's no show I wanted to like more than Designated Survivor, and it just wasn't working for me. So yeah, we'll have to see. Although The Last Kingdom is on there, and that's a really great show. But nonetheless, we'll keep a close eye out for all of this. I do think HBO is the right company for this. The feel, I'm really curious to see what they do with the clickers, especially how they look and all of this and who they cast as Joel and Ellie and all of the rest. We will see how it all goes.
Can you imagine if they somehow got Del Toro to make the clickers? That'd be awesome.
Yeah, it'd be super sweet. Yeah, because they're great. I mean, the clicker designs, the cauliflower headed designs are super cool. Picture it. You get out of a long day of work, you hate your boss, you're running headlong into the whirlwind that's waiting at home, and all you want to do is have a relaxing commute, whether in your car or on the train or bus. You have options, of course. You can listen to some depressing political podcasts or the same music you've heard over and over again, or if you're a hardcore dedicated gamer like me, you can tune into the Gaming Ride Home podcast, a daily 15 to 20 minute show that's designed with one thing in mind, to fill you in on all the news and info emanating from the gaming industry over the previous 24 hours. Gaming Ride Home is hosted by Kyle Hilliard of Game Informer and IGN fame, and over the last 2 years, the show has been downloaded a staggering 25 million times. Better yet, it's published at 5 p.m., so all of you out there working the usual 9 to 5 will have something waiting for you when you leave your desk and head into what will hopefully be a relaxing evening. You can also stack the episodes up over several days or even a week or more and catch up that way too. Either way, you'll be a well-informed gamer, and really, what more can you ask for? So search your podcast app right now and subscribe to Gaming Ride Home, wherever fine podcasts are hosted. Number 4, Call of Duty Warzone. The previously rumored Call of Duty free-to-play battle royale game has officially been revealed, and by the time you hear this podcast, it'll be available for you to download and play. Warzone allows for up to 150 players per map and accommodates 2 modes, an every man for himself battle royale, as you'd find in other like-minded games, and a so-called contracts mode that's all about raising funds by completing tasks as you survive the fray. It's important to note that, though this game is connected to Infinity Ward's Modern Warfare, you don't actually need to have purchased that game nor have it downloaded to play. Warzone employs seamless cross-play between platforms as well as cross-progression and employs a buy station mechanic where monies made in-game can be stored and used to buy upgrades and other items throughout the experience. So this was announced right before we recorded today, so this is the newest piece of news here on our sheet. What do you think of this, Chris? Are you going to check? You're more into this space than I am, much more. Are you going to check this out of curiosity, or?
No. Probably not even a little bit. I just, Battle Royale as a concept is so, it's such a huge turnoff for me. I only recently started trying out Apex Legends because like a bunch of friends of mine had it and they were like, oh, you should try it. And I was like, all right. And it's good. I like it. It's fun, whatever. But there's only so much room for something like this. You know, I just started playing Apex Legends and I don't imagine that I'm going to be playing another Battle Royale in addition to it. Like, there's no reason. I feel like people have their one Battle Royale that they play to unwind or maybe get good or maybe get competitive at, and they don't play the other ones. And I feel like it's a market that is continuously dwindling. And I question the wisdom of involving yourself in this because it also just seems desperate for a studio or an IP that doesn't really show any signs of desperation at all. They dominated the sales charts for the last 10 years. And they're just jumping into this chaotic marketplace. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, it's peculiar for sure. I feel like, as I said, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, that they're probably the only publisher and the only brand that could pierce this at this point and make a go out of it. Because, like you said, between PUBG and Fortnite and Apex Legends and whatever else, there's just no one left. I don't understand. I've never seen a genre get quite so crowded so quickly. And I know that there's a lot of money on the line here and that some of the biggest games in the world are these games. But it's the same reason why a lot of Minecraft clones crop up and either find like a real niche audience that's reliable, like Dragon Quest Builders as an example, or more likely just goes away because we already, like we say all the time, we already have a George. We don't need another Minecraft game. And so I agree with you. First of all, just shout out, I mean, they should have never made the game to begin with, but shout out to Housemarque for abandoning Stormdivers because they were about to lose their entire industry or their entire studio because of that game.
Yeah.
And you can see now that a lot of other persistent multiplayer games, even if they're not Battle Royale, it's just like, it's dangerous stuff. I don't understand why you want to be in this space. Now, I'm not going to compare in any way, shape, or form Twin Breaker to something this big and this popular, but some people are asking like, well, why are you making a brick breaking game? And I'm like, because there are no fucking brick breaking games. That's why we made a brick breaking game. Like, I'm not going to go make a game that's going to try to compete with other things that already exist and that you already love when I can try to deliver to you something else. But I think Call of Duty is just one of those brands where they can make a go of it. I'll be really interested to see how this does.
Yeah.
And if people enjoy it. I know it's raising the cap, so it's a little bit more of a robust map. It's still not as big as MAG at 256 players, but
yeah,
I don't know, Chris. I'm really confused about any further entrance into this space. Now they're really going to start to cannibalize each other. And I think that the studios that are really wholly reliant on the revenue from these games better diversify quick, because I don't know that they're going to like what ends up happening to them. Like we see this with Riot with League of Legends, where they finally started working on and talking about other games. But I'll be interested 5 years down the road if we find out that that was just too late for them.
It's just insane.
They're huge now, but
they're even competing with other. There's already a battle royale in Call of Duty Black Ops 4. There's already, like, I think it's Blackout. I think literally is what it's called. So now they're competing with their own battle royale. It's insane. This is just insanity. I don't know. I can't.
Yeah, I don't get it either. And like I've said, I don't think they've announced it yet, but I've talked to people behind the scenes, unless things have changed, is that the new Halo game is going to have a battle royale mode. So we're gonna see how all of these things can coexist with one another. You know, we're gonna find out for sure. I mean, I think I talked about it. Like the reason all those TVs were on stage at E3 that year was for reveal Halo Battle Royale, which they then pulled out from because of the reception that EA got to Battlefield.
Well, good. I hope it's a similar Stormdiver situation where they were like, we don't need this.
We will see. They haven't talked about it, so they might have made that decision, but I have that on great authority.
They said specifically after E3 that they were like, there is no Battle Royale.
Yeah, that's
so we'll see.
I have it on pretty good authority.
Well,
that was the case.
I don't doubt that there probably was, but I would be shocked if there still is.
Why? Here, the thing is like, just looking at those TVs on stage, like, why were they there? Why do you like, that's the thing where I was like, they're there because people are going to sit there and play them.
Yeah, we'll see.
Number 5, Final Fantasy VII Remake has officially gone gold, meaning that publisher/developer Square Enix has completed development of the game and has submitted it for certification and publishing. Word comes by way of website Silicon Era, which translated an interview with major Japanese gaming website 4Gamer conducted with the remake's director, Tetsuya Nomura. Within, he confirmed the game is completed and will be released on time on April 10th, having been delayed once before following a seemingly tumultuous behind-the-scenes development journey that had the original developer of the game, CyberConnect 2, stripped of its duties so that Square Enix can complete it in-house. This news couldn't have better timing as the demo just came to PS4 last week. We just talked about that, so we can skip ahead. We already asked Chris what he thinks of it. Nathan Densley did write into us and ask us about what Chris thought of the demo, but we did talk about that at the top of the show. He says it's on his radar now to play. Seems like that is a common thought since the game is now selling so well on Amazon. Number 6, an important piece of PlayStation history has been sold at auction for a serious amount of money and is now in private hands. As you may know, the PlayStation brand began in the early 90s as an add-on for the Super Famicom. When things went sour between Sony and Nintendo, Sony spun the idea off into its own console called PlayStation, which launched in Japan in late 1994. However, a prototype of that Super Famicom add-on has long been known to exist, and for the price of $360,000, it was sold to a collector. And thanks to Forbes, we know who that collector is. Greg McLemore, the founder of Toys.com and Pets.com, and an early internet entrepreneur who has, for 2 decades, been collecting tons of rare and expensive gaming items across arcade, pinball, home console, computer, and handheld verticals. His goal is to build a museum dedicated to video games, and his Nintendo PlayStation prototype will be a centerpiece of that experiment. It's been noted that the seller of the device purchased it for a scant $75 originally, not knowing what it was, and was actually offered $1.2 million for it privately, which he foolishly turned down in order to go to the auction. So he could have made 4 times more than he made. Still a nice little net gain, but I'd be pretty I would never forget that.
Yeah.
As long as I lived.
Yeah, no. That would haunt me.
So this is really cool. I mean, this really is an interesting piece of PlayStation history. And it's cool that it's in the hands of someone who's not going to just put it in their private collection, but hopefully build a museum out of it. I know that the video game museum that already exists actually publicly asked him to show it at their facility, but I guess he's going to make some sort of competing facility of video game history. It's cool that we're getting into an industry so old now that we can have places like this.
Yeah.
So congratulations to Greg McLemore for his $360,000 investment.
That's crazy.
It is totally unnecessary. Number 7, what is Project Maverick? Well, it appears to be some sort of Star Wars game, and the only reason we know about it is because it's been added to the back end of the European PlayStation Store, a fact which the Twitter account PSN Release alerted to the world as it has back-end connection to all PSN uploads. The upload included an image with the Star Wars-esque logo for the game, and according to website Gamatsu, we know just a little bit about it. It seems to be a beta version of the game. It's not a PSVR game, and it appears to be a multiplayer game. As publisher Electronic Arts has an exclusive deal with Disney to create Star Wars games, it's certainly one of their titles, though we're still waiting on word on exactly what it might be. I don't know if this is wishful thinking or not, but a lot of people, Chris, are saying that this is like X-Wing or X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, some sort of re-release or remake of that. But did you see anything about this? All we have of it is the logo and like some sort of splash screen. That's literally it. And then I guess they figured these other little tidbits out by reading the data that was uploaded. So we know it's not a PSVR game. We know it's multiplayer, etc. And since it's Star Wars related, it's got to be an EA game. But we don't know anything else about it.
Yeah, really weird. I have no idea what to make of this. I don't know if it's a remake. I feel like it's more likely. I don't know. There's no buzz about this, so maybe it's like a smaller title, like kind of not a battle royale exactly, but maybe some like loose multiplayer tie-in for something. I don't know. This is really weird.
We will see. It seems like one of those things, since it's already in the back end, it seems like one of those things they're just going to announce and release. But it does seem like it could be a beta for something else. So,
oh, yeah.
We will find out. Maybe it's something to do with Battlefront 3 as well. We did learn, as we talked about a few weeks ago, that Battlefront 3 was essentially canceled, or at least put on the shelf.
Yeah.
So, who knows?
Can you imagine that? They just fixed Battlefront 2, and they're like, all right, new one.
Yeah, that's true. Battlefront 2 is chugging along very nicely right now. A little late, but...
Yeah.
Number 8, E3's problems seem to be deepening significantly. A month or so ago, the ever-evolving trade show started in the mid-90s, lost its longtime host and MC, Jeff Keighley, and now E3 has lost its creative directing team too. The team at I Am 8-Bit was tasked with helping to direct this year's E3, but tweeted, quote, "It's with mixed emotions that I Am 8-Bit has decided to resign as creative directors of what was to be an evolutionary E3 2024 experience. We've produced hundreds of gaming and community events, and it was a dream to be involved with E3. We wish the organizers the best of luck," end quote. Website Games Industry International reached out to I Am 8-Bit, which declined to comment further. But the DSA, the organization that runs E3, told the website, quote, "We can confirm that I Am 8-Bit is no longer part of the interagency group working on E3 2020. We greatly value their passion for the video game industry and contributions they brought towards our vision for this year's show. We have an innovative and experienced team in place, including Endeavor's creative agency 160over90, event innovators Matt and Lowe, and longtime E3 partners GES, Dolar Events, and Double Forte, all collaborating to bring to life an exciting and authentic experience for fans, the media, and the industry," end quote. E3 2020 is expected to run from June 9th through June 11th in Los Angeles, and is currently on track to proceed despite the threat posed by coronavirus, which recently postponed GDC and outright canceled the famous annual event in Texas, South by Southwest. This comes on the back that the annual German gaming convention Gamescom is also planning to proceed as usual, according to IGN, though the powers that be with that mega show are still tracking the situation. Now, Chris, there's something in this quote. I like picking quotes apart because I think they're really deliberate.
Yeah.
When they release them. At the end of the ESA's comment, they say, "Bring to life an exciting and authentic experience for fans, the media, and the industry," in that order. Now, I don't mean to be a dickhead, but E3 is for the industry first, and then the media, and then the fans. Traditionally, that's what it was. Mm-hmm. It's a media event that industry types show off games to be written about, to be sold and bought, to find publishers, to find interested developers to work on projects. So they've inverted it, and I think that that's really key to this entire thing.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you think about I Am 8-Bit bailing out? It seems like their comment is passive-aggressive to me, and they refuse to comment any further when they were asked by Games Industry International to talk about it. I feel like E3 is going to be canceled probably because of the coronavirus, but also seems to be, I mean, this and Jeff Keighley both leaving is not good in these really vague terms. Do you have any thoughts about?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think you wouldn't say mixed emotions, you know, if it wasn't like you usually would say, oh, we're really saddened, you know, or we're really disappointed. You wouldn't be like, I'm kind of happy.
Yeah, that's a good point. Mixed emotions, yes.
Yeah, that was the thing that stuck out to me. But yeah, I mean, it very well could be canceled. I would imagine that it would. Honestly, I would say that it's probably the responsible thing to do to cancel it. But I know there's a lot of money in this, and I know that without E3, this thing falls apart. And if E3 falls apart this year, it's not coming back because I think a lot of people are going to realize that they probably don't need it. And there's very little reason to allocate resources specifically for an E3 demo in 2021 when there was no E3 in 2020 and everything was just fine. So I think it could be pretty cataclysmic if it doesn't happen. I would be super disappointed though that we didn't get a final E3, really, like not a proper one. That would really suck. I would hope that at least, I know Microsoft has a conference theater. I know they have a theater. So I would hope that at least that happens in some way, shape, or form. Because for it to just stop with no fanfare would be really, really fucking lame.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I hadn't even really considered that it could just be like going out with a dud. Yeah. Although I don't know that we would ever really get a true last E3 and be in the moment knowing that it was the true last E3. Trench Sinning wrote into us and said, "What's up, gents? There has been lots of talk and rumors going around recently that it's a real possibility that E3 might get canceled this year due to the coronavirus. If this does indeed happen, do you guys think it will pretty much kill E3 entirely? If E3 got canceled and all the publishers ended up doing Nintendo Direct style events instead, I feel this will lead them to realizing how little they lose by not being at E3 and end up following Sony's lead and ditching E3. So Chris just brought this up. I do think that E3 is in such a precarious situation anyway. Before Jeff Keighley left, before I Am 8-Bit left, before coronavirus engulfed the planet, that I do think that it's fairly likely that this would be a killing blow to what E3 at least is. Maybe it comes back in 2021 as something altered, although I think that that's what they were going to try to do this year. And we also have like a little less than 3 months between now and the show. So the situation with coronavirus could clean up significantly. But I just think, as I've said, I think video game shows are just inherently more dirty and more prone to spreading this stuff, not only because gamers obviously have a bad reputation with cleanliness, which is both earned and unearned, but it's also with everyone touching controllers and putting on PSVR headsets and shaking hands and coming from all over the world. Unlike if you go to a convention for like cattle ranchers or something in Kansas, it's like, well, I don't think people from all over the world are going to that. So I think there's a lessened risk for exposure. But yeah, I think this is bad news. I would be surprised. Gamescom is still a ways off. I've been to Gamescom twice and it's really fucking crazy there. That's like 500,000 people in one place, and Europe's getting hit pretty hard. So I also wouldn't be surprised to see that canceled. But I think we're so far away from that there's no way to make a decision one way or the other. Yeah. We will keep a close eye on this, though, as we move forward.
Yeah.
Number 9, a new horror game is en route to PlayStation 4 this fall in the form of Amnesia Rebirth. Rebirth will be the third game in the Amnesia horror franchise, one that began back in 2010 with the release of Amnesia: The Dark Descent. The game is being developed by Swedish studio Frictional Games, which created the other two Amnesia games, including the 2013 sequel, A Machine for Pigs, as well as 2015's Soma, a well-received horror game which came to PS4 back in 2015. While Rebirth will come to PS4 at the same time it's released on PC, this wasn't the case for the first two Amnesia games, which only came to PS4 in 2016. Frictional Games was founded in 2007, and its first games were a horror trilogy in a franchise called Penumbra, which are still only available on PC. Are you a fan at all of these Amnesia games or Soma, anything like that?
I played Amnesia: The Dark Descent when it was kind of popping on YouTube. I know that a lot of famous or now famous YouTube Let's Play people were playing it. And I remember it was like, oh, this looks pretty terrifying. And I did play it on like my garbage Windows Vista laptop, which did not last long. But no, not at all. But I enjoyed it. It was cool. I don't know if it's necessarily my kind of game. It's a very hide oriented game. It's a lot like Outlast in that regard, where you can't really, there's no defense and you just kind of have to run and hide, which is super cool for horror games. But I think horror in general is just a hard thing for me to get into because horror games so uniquely scare me. Like I feel like horror movies and horror TV shows and even like scary books or whatever the hell, they don't really do the same. They don't really affect me in the same way that a game does. So like I just typically have a hard time playing them and be like, oh, that's a really good horror game. I guess I'll never play it.
Yeah, I like a little more action in my horror games, although I think there's a place for everything. I know people really liked Soma, which I played a little bit of, but I didn't get all the way through it. So maybe it's a game I can return to at some point. But I know people are going to be excited about this one, and I look forward to seeing what it's all about. And number 10, Sony has revealed February 2020's most downloaded games on the PlayStation Network for that month. The 20 most downloaded games for that 29-day period on PS4 were in order: The Division 2, Grand Theft Auto 5, NBA 2K20, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, Dreams, Rainbow Six Siege, Minecraft, Ark Survival Evolved, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, Hunt Showdown, EA Sports UFC 3, FIFA 20, Spider-Man, Red Dead Redemption 2, Need for Speed Heat, Star Wars Battlefront 2, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, The Forest, and Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. The top 20 PSVR games for the month were in order: Beat Saber, Super Hot VR, Job Simulator, Blood and Truth, Creed Rise to Glory, Drunken Bar Fight, Surgeon Simulator, Vacation Simulator, Arizona Sunshine, and Until Dawn Rush of Blood. The top 10 free-to-play games for February were in order: Fortnite, Apex Legends, Cuisine Royale, Brawlhalla, Dauntless, Darwin Project, Warframe, Realm Royale, Paladins, and Warface. Fortnite, GTA Online, Apex Legends, and Street Fighter V DLC dominated the expansions list. Chris, I can't help but notice that Dreams is number 5 on this list.
Well, look at that.
And some people are saying that this is a big success for the game. I completely disagree, but because nothing came out. The Division 2 obviously is a big winner because it was literally like $2 or $3, so that's obviously going to be way up there. But it's worth noting that Dreams finished behind Grand Theft Auto 5, which came out in 2013, NBA 2K20, which came out last fall, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, which came out last fall. So just throwing that out there. Still, I'm glad that people are enjoying it, but Silent and Cliche wrote into us, said, "Hey, C-Men, we need merch with that name. Since Chris Fever Dreams video made me think of it, and Colin is clearly stoked about talking about some dreams, with its inevitable failure forthcoming," I don't think it's inevitable, "I wonder why more people aren't talking about its potential success in the not safe for work or adult content world. I mean, it's hard to imagine Sony openly supporting and moderating an AO version, but if it's that or lose millions, the prospect of adult games and animations that could be simple to create but look relatively like modern AAA games would be a niche market as far as I know, especially if they find a way for creators to monetize. I remember how big of an adult game community there was back when Flash became widely used, and I was scientifically researching such things. I don't know, sounds like an untapped gold mine to me. What do you guys think? Is Sony leaving that sweet, sweet weeb money on the table? And in the unlikely event that they did allow such creations, think it would save the game? Thank you both for making Tuesdays slightly bearable in this confusing mortal coil we call existence." Thank you for your question. Unfortunately, I mean, well, maybe fortunately, depending on how you look at it, Sony is moving in the exact opposite direction where they're censoring a lot more stuff these days, and even over Nintendo Switch editions of the same game, which is frustrating a lot of different people. I'm a little confused why AO stuff isn't a little more embraced on PlayStation and other consoles too, but I also understand that the reason for that is that A, GameStop and Amazon and the like don't carry AO games, and B, you can potentially alienate your publishing partners by having their games available on the same marketplace or alongside a game. Like imagine, I don't know, I can't think of any perverted word that would be a double entendre right now, but imagine if there was like a word that you searched for to find one game, and so you found that game, but in the search bar next to it was like the pornographic game.
Yeah.
And that would be a problem probably for the publisher of the not pornographic game. So there are a lot of different aspects of this that you have to think about, unfortunately, because that would be cool. That would be interesting to let people make their own AO games, but I would like to see an AO marketplace of proper games too, What do you think of a silent and cliches inquiry here, Chris? What do you think about the not safe for work angle with dreams?
Well, they're definitely not going to do that because it's Media Molecule.
Yeah, that's true, too.
It's a very kid-friendly experience. I think they banned some player because they made... It wasn't a nude female model. It was just like the way you would go about modeling... The way you would go around... the way you would go about modeling a female character in a game. It's like, there was no detail or anything, but it was just the general figure, and it was like very, realistic. But that dude was banned just for making the model for other people to use, and it's like, that's a pretty weird thing to me. Like, if they're gonna draw the line there, then you're certainly not gonna get AO content. But like, I think a more interesting conversation to have is like why they're drawing the line there when they know very well that making games requires you model characters, and it's very strange to me that they would tout this like marketplace of creativity and like, oh, make whatever the hell you want. It's like, oh, I want to make a super realistic game. Oh, well, you can't have a woman in it. It's like, what?
Yeah, I don't know about... I haven't been paying attention to Dreams at all. I got to probably download it and just go look at what's going on there. Because I don't know. I feel like it... First of all, you're right. This is not going to happen. Media Molecule is not the studio that do it too. But as far as the game doing well, like people looking at this as a good sign, I'm like, I don't know, guys. I don't think finishing 5th in a month where nothing has come out, come out, is a really good sign. I wouldn't read the Division 2 being so big either, because it again was available for literally nothing. So yeah, I'm glad that it's certainly charted higher than I thought it was, but I don't know. We'll see how it all goes. And I don't know how they work out the downloads too. Like, when they talk about downloads, is it also people that bought the pre-release like beta version like I did and you did, and then just downloaded it? Do we count as a sale? I'd be curious to know about that too. But nonetheless, we are rooting for it. I would love for it to do great. And I don't think, by the way, its failure is inevitable at all. I don't think it's failing right now. I think it's just a very niche game that probably doesn't need to exist, but we'll see how it does.
Yeah.
Number 11. This is a wrap-up. Website Gamatsu reports that PSVR horror title The Persistence is also coming to standard PS4 players sometime this summer. That unofficial Quidditch-like game Broomstick League is coming to PS4 either later in 2020 or early in 2021. That adventure game Relicta is coming to PS4 sometime later this year. That roguelike game Curse of the Dead Gods is coming to PS4 at an unknown time. And that space sim Hard Space Shipbreaker is coming to PS4 at an unknown time too. Indie publisher Radalaika Games has revealed 6 new Ps4 visual novels coming to the console over the next year, including Angels with Scaly Wings, A Summer with the Shiba Inu, Blind Men, Josei, The First Case HD, Long Live the Queen, and Tales of Avavorn. Seasons of the Wolf Blind Men will also be available on PS Vita. The official PlayStation blog has revealed that realistic sporting game Skater XL is coming to PS4 likely later this year. Cartoon Network has revealed that it's releasing a new Ben 10 video game alongside the launch of the Ben 10 vs. the Universe, the movie, this fall. The game is to be developed by PHL Collective, a Philadelphia-based team that already created a Ben 10-related game in the form of Omnicharged. Website Push Square reports that PSVR game Paper Beast is coming soon on March 24th. Developer NetherRealm has revealed that Spawn will be joining the cast of Mortal Kombat 11 on March 24th, though Season Pass owners will get him a week earlier. And finally, the 2013 digital game DuckTales Remastered, a remake of the Capcom NES original DuckTales game, is back on digital services, including PSN via PS3, after being taken down in the summer of 2019, likely over a licensing dispute. So that is all the news, Chris. It's now time for us to get into the games that are coming out this week, and as tradition dictates, you will go first.
Alrighty. Covert comes out on PS4, recruited by a mysterious client. You and a partner take on a series of high-profile heists. Utilize gadgets to infiltrate the various facilities as the crafty thief in VR and breach through security systems as the clever hacker on a mobile device. Cooperation and trust will be necessary to sneak past guards, hack through laser grids, crack safes, and much more.
All right. Hidden Through Time comes to PS4. Embark on a colorful hand-drawn journey of discovery through the ages. From missing dinosaur eggs in the Stone Age to a king's crown in medieval times. Can you find them all? Discover, create, and share worlds with your own hidden treasures in Hidden Through Time.
Jump Step Step comes to PS4. Jump Step Step is a gorgeous and funny programming game with bonsai trees, a crazy robot, and a broken rocket. Bob is short-circuited and goes mental. Please send him a series of moves to guide him back to his ship. Without your help, Bob will probably tell himself to step on a spike and die.
What is a programming game? What does that mean?
I don't know. Maybe it's dreams.
Yeah, are they saying like you basically set forth like this, like you set forth an event and then you watch it happen?
Maybe it's like that what was that mobile game where you would like build a bridge? It was like a physics-based game and you would like try to get a truck from one side to the other and building like weird bridges and shit.
Oh, I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, it might be.
I don't play
like
mobile games.
Oh, well, good.
Langrisser 1 and 2 comes to PS4. I'm actually stoked about this. You are the arbiter of fate in a world ravaged by wars through generations of heroes who battle for peace, order, or chaos. Command Ledwin, Elwyn, and their companions in their quest to obtain the sacred sword Langrisser and restore peace to a war-stricken land. Decide who your allegiance lies with in Langrisser 1 and 2 Remastered for modern consoles. I know you're going to play that one, Chris.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I do like anything with the word arbiter in it. I like that word.
It's cool because Langrisser, the original Langrisser and Langrisser 2 came to Genesis back in the day, and they're strategy role-playing games. So it's pretty cool. I don't think we've ever gotten them in the West on console. I think they came to PC, so I'm looking forward to playing them.
Yeah. Monster Viator?
Yeah, I wish it was Violator because that would be funny.
Yeah, that's what my brain kept autocorrecting it to. Okay, Monster Viator or Monster Viator comes to PS4. Unable to remember who he is, Coulter is mysteriously able to communicate with monsters. He soon comes across Ira, a shepherd who controls monsters with a harp, and they set out together to uncover his memories. A fairy tale-like adventure with a legendary hero, with 1,000 monsters, a fountain of truth, and a witch unfolds.
All right. My Hero 1's Justice 2 comes to PS4. My Hero 1's Justice 2, the over-the-top follow-up to the smash hit 3D arena fighter, makes its heroic debut. Make full use of characters' quirks as you clash head-to-head in epic battles across huge arenas. Includes a bonus for purchasing the previous game, My Hero 1's Justice, special customization items for Izuku Midoriya. Oh, God. All right.
Neon City Riders comes to PS4. Looking for a 2D action adventure mixed with superpowered urban gangs in a post-cyberpunk neon scenario?
Yes.
Okay, good. Because take on the role of Rick, a masked vigilante who needs to explore the decaying futuristic neon city in search of items, superpowers, and companions to free the TERFs from the 4 superpowered gangs' claws.
The TERFs, all right.
Yeah.
Finally, I think this is the first truly big game coming out this year. Nioh 2 comes to PS4. Journey to 1555 Japan, a country gripped in endless warfare where monsters and evil spirits stalk a land of natural beauty and menacing peril. Hunt down your enemies as a rogue mercenary wielding the supernatural powers of the mythical yokai. Can you survive the treacherous Sengoku era and the new and terrifying Dark Realm? Are you going to play Nioh 2, Chris?
Is this hard?
Yeah.
Nah. I still haven't gotten around to Nioh 1, man. I gotta play. I can't jump into Nioh 2. I'm not without playing the first one, you know? I'm not a degenerate.
You're not a degenerate pagan or anything like that. I understand.
Pagan. Super Destronaut Land Wars comes to PS4 and PS Vita. Inspired by arcade classics, this new arcade experience mixes a first-person viewpoint with classic invader-style shooting. Together, this unique mashup will test your skills across 30 different challenges. For a change of pace, try arcade mode, which mixes different playstyles like combo breaker and snail mode.
Love snail mode.
Everybody loves the snail mode. Obviously, Nioh 2 is the standout here.
Yeah, definitely Nioh 2, and for my fellow nerds, Langrisser 1 and 2 as well will be cool. Can't wait to play those. So yeah, that is basically it for the games that are coming out. Now, as tradition also dictates, Chris, we end every week's episode with 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas from the audience. Remember, you can submit these questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas to the audience by joining us on Patreon at patreon.com/CollinsLastStand, where we put up a thread each and every week that you can then respond to. I go through all of that shit, and we figure it all out from there. Kelton Rasmussen wrote in and said, "Hey guys, I know Colin is a firm believer in don't sell your hardware, but with a high chance of PS4 backwards compatibility on the next-gen hardware, why would I keep my PS4 around? I recently went through some storage and found my old PS1 right next to my PS2 and realized I would never prefer to use the original hardware over the PS2. If that same mentality applies with the PS4, PS5 jump in the future, why wouldn't I take the $150 offered by a trade-in to subsidize a potentially $500 purchase this fall, or a 30% savings? I love my PS1 for nostalgia reasons, but even I must admit it makes a better paperweight than gaming option at this point. Thanks. What do you think of this, Chris? Are you a firm believer like I am in keeping your hardware?
I'm not a firm believer in it, but I typically keep my hardware, and if I've ever sold my hardware, I typically try to buy it back like 10 years later because I miss it. So I think from here on out, I'm probably not going to sell any of my hardware because I just don't see a point. If anything, my PS4, when the PS5 comes out, will act as a hard drive where I have all the PS4 games that I don't feel like filling my PS5 with. In my opinion, I probably won't play it really all that much, but I don't know, man. I think there's merit to keeping your hardware. I personally love my PS1, and I actually still turn it on and play it every now and again, far more than I do with my PS2, which is still here, also playable. Granted, my PS1 is modded, so that might have something to do with it. But I think I don't know, man. I don't like parting with that stuff just because it's just cool from a historical standpoint. It's cool to have this thing that's been around for so long and still works. Like, that's not easy to come across, really. Like, my NES just was completely destroyed because my parents put it in an attic for 7 years. And if you know anything about what an attic is, you know that it gets pretty fucking hot and pretty fucking cold over and over again throughout the year.
Yeah, fluctuates wildly.
Yeah, so
destroying everything in it.
Nah, that thing was like microwaved and frozen for years before I found it, and it was tragic. I was really sad when I tried to bust that thing out and it didn't work. So, you know, I don't know, man. Keep your hardware, but also keep it safe, I guess would be my thing. Because you don't understand how fragile consoles are when they're not in like a livable space.
Yeah, and they become more fragile the more moving parts and more technologically advanced they become. That's why it's much more common to find an Atari 2600 or an NES that works than a PS3 or a PS2. I'm a firm believer of it just because I think that, well, there's two things. First, I think Chris's point here stands that this is like a little piece of history, but it's not only a piece of history, it's like a piece of your history. This is the console where you had all of these experiences, and just keeping it from that perspective, I think, is cool. And you're talking about trading it in to subsidize a purchase, but that's certainly an interesting point and a well-taken point. Money's tight for many people, and that totally makes sense. But you're not really saving money because you're selling the console. So you're subsidizing it, yes, but it's not like something you're just doing for free. You're losing access to this old console. And I think a big reason why you might want to keep it too is you might not have full backwards compatibility between PS4 and PS5. And even if you do, you can still go back and play your games on PS4 and so on and so forth at will. So I just think that there are a lot of different reasons why you want to keep your old hardware. But if you really feel like you need to sell it to subsidize the purchase of the new console, by all means, do so. It's your hardware, it's your money. I'm not going to tell you what to do with it. Radic Did Nothing Wrong wrote in, very nice name, Killzone reference. Says, hey guys, first time writing in here. I've been playing Division 2 lately, and the newest expansion came with a very unwelcome set of gear reworks. My mods have been re-rolled against my will. Exotic weapons have completely different and useless abilities now, and worst of all, the gear set bonus has changed. This requires players to learn a new system of gear stats to continue playing the game, and completely destroyed what I had spent 120 plus hours building. I haven't touched the game since the update dropped because of how cumbersome it would be to relearn how to make a build in a game that did not even need this change. My question to you fine folks is this. Has a game update, usually games as a service types, ever turned you completely off from a game because of balancing and reworks? Chris, I really wanted to direct this question at you as you're more in this space than I am. I love The Division, but I don't really give a fuck about all these little tweaks, and I probably wouldn't even notice any of this stuff if I turned it on.
Yeah.
But what did you make of this? This has been making the rounds with The Division 2 that they've actually gone back and changed, like reinvented the wheel with some stuff that probably didn't need this to happen. So what do you think of that, and has anything similar happened to you with games that you've played in the past?
Yeah, no, it's super annoying when, you know, you get really competent with a game and you kind of find what works and you kind of understand how to play it, and you learn to get good at it for a long time, and then for some reason the developer just plugs in this giant update that completely undoes a lot of what you've learned, and it does feel like, oh well, fuck. If you're just gonna, why get good at this now if there's a possibility that you're just going to probably rework this and make my skill completely useless? That definitely has turned me off from games before. I think Destiny 2 turned me off like pretty soon after launch. I think like maybe a year after launch. It got me back eventually, but for a while there, I was like, dude, they keep changing the stats. Like oh, this week it's, assault rifles are really effective, and it's like, oh, cool, okay. And then like, oh, hand cannons work this week. Auto rifles suck, and it's like, oh, what the hell? How am I supposed to get good at this if you're just constantly changing the rules? It would be like if you played chess, but then, oh, this week the queen can't move. It's like, what? This is like a pretty big change to how I would typically strategize, Like, these kinds of things can be super disruptive. I totally get why something like that's pretty drastic. I don't think even Destiny has had an update that's completely removed functionality from exotics and completely just bent over backwards and, just destroyed the gear set. That way, I could totally see that being a turnoff for a lot of players, especially people who are, really into it and are consistently playing it and have gotten consistently used to a certain kind of feel and a certain kind of game. And it's honestly why I still play a lot of older multiplayer games, because these are games that, even when they were able to be patched and able to be fixed through patching, they never really changed all that much and allowed you to get really good at them, and it allowed you to feel comfortable coming back 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years after, because you knew that the game was more or less exactly what you left. And I wish that more developers would focus on just balancing something correctly the first time, instead of constantly reacting to feedback and like constantly being like, oh, people don't like auto rifles. Maybe maybe we'll make something that was good worse to appease some section of the community that had some kind of a problem with it. Just let people get good at the game, and let people get good with the systems that you designed, that you launched with the game for a reason, because you clearly thought it worked then. I don't know. It's a whole. This could be. I could do a whole thing on this. I could speak for hours about this one topic. Bothers the hell out of me.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear your perspective, because I'm not in that space, but also I think there's a difference between balancing and like finding the proper balance when a game just comes out and you realize like, oh, we need to nerf this weapon a little bit. It is like our data and heat mapping is showing that this is more powerful than we intended in the beta and then the alpha. Sure. Like, I get all that stuff if you do that quick, but messing around with the Division 2, which came out a year ago, where no one seemed to really be complaining about it being broken in the respects that are now being fixed, is strange. And I do wonder if this has something to do with Ubisoft as a publisher overcompensating for problems that it's experiencing in other games. Like, they've gone with, Ghost Recon Breakpoint or whatever it's called. And that's what the game's called, right? Breakpoint?
Yeah, I think so.
They're going in and like totally rehauling that game. And that game was an abject failure. And I wonder if that kind of has spread out that sort of fear of not having it be perfect. It would have been probably smarter for them to launch the Warlords of New York expansion and then seen what happened and then made fixes from there.
Right.
Especially because it's not a competitive game. I know there's PvP and stuff in the game and the Dark Zone and all of that, but it's not like a battle royale or a deathmatch game. So it doesn't even really matter if weapons are unbalanced immediately right off the bat, because you're playing with squads going against AI controlled enemies. So it just doesn't seem that consequential to me, even if it was broken. But I'm kind of talking from a point of ignorance on this. So
no, I think it's valid. I think for the most part, if you're just worried about AI in games, that's kind of the beauty of having a game that's a lot more focused on PvE than it is focused on PvP, and that's what makes Anthem so confusing. Like, Anthem was just entirely PvE, and all the weapons just sucked. just so weird.
That's another game getting rebuilt from the ground up.
Yeah.
So we will see how that all goes. I'll be eagerly anticipating that as well.
Just never ends.
Anthony J. Sanchez wrote into us and said, "Hey, CNC, have either of you hit a moment in your life where stress was taking over so much that concentrating on a game was nearly impossible? I recently had this happen with family and work stress. Luckily, I'm back to my old self now. Thanks from sunny Florida." Chris, what do you make of this inquiry from Anthony J. Sanchez? I know a lot of people, I do. I know a lot of people use games to get away from the real world, but there does come an inflection point, for me anyway, where something's happening in my life that's so tumultuous that I can't focus on even watching a TV show.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, playing a game. I've had a really bad couple of weeks in my real life, pretty bad emotional couple weeks.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And I've had a hard time focusing on anything because of it. I can't compartmentalize very well what needs to happen and what I need to do when I'm just feeling down. And I know we joke around about it. You and I joke around and are sardonic and stuff, but I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I'm a pretty dire person sometimes emotionally. Like I wish I wasn't that way. I wish I was more bubbly and happy, but I'm not.
Yeah.
I suffer from depression and anxiety, and I'm a loner, and I'm pretty insular, and a lot of things kind of crumble down on me a lot. So this question really I related to it because I get it. Like I've been there, and I think I'm kind of there right now. So I'm wondering what you think of Anthony's question about stress and focusing on games and all that.
Oh yeah, no, I think it happens quite a bit. It's very difficult for me to escape with games because every time I'm playing a game, I'm very cognizant that I'm not working. You know what I mean? In some way, in some form. Like I know I'm technically working because it's obviously like if I'm playing a game, I have things to talk about on this show. Also, I could stream and I could make it work, but it's also like it feels more like pleasure than it does like work. So I feel there's like an element of guilt to it. It's like I should be grinding and trying to make shit happen. But I definitely I'm with you. It's hard for me to compartmentalize things, and if I'm in a bad place, then it's pretty much hard for me to do anything other than just sort of like lay in my bed and like just watch YouTube videos and just eat ice cream. But I don't know, man. That's a whole therapy session at that point.
Yeah, it's true, but it is a whole therapy session. But yeah, I felt this because I think it takes all types. I think there are all types of gamers, all types of players and enthusiasts. But I feel like a lot of us, or many of us, share a sort of common bond in being more of a loner, more of an outsider, more susceptible to emotional and mental anguish in some way. Because what we do is not social. And even if it is social, you're on party chat or you're playing a multiplayer game or whatever, it's not social in the way that is societally deemed social. It doesn't mean that you can't be a player of a video game and also a social butterfly. Those exist too. But I don't know. I just felt this because right now I'm going through some shit in my own life, and
yeah,
I wish that I could escape from games or with games. And there are times where I'm going through something and it just doesn't hit that inflection point where I'm like, all right, I'm really stressed out right now. I'm going to go play a game, and then I forget about the world. But I'm in the place now where I'm with you. Like when I'm feeling depressed and sad and anxious, like I just lay in my bed and just want to sleep or be on my phone, like just looking at things.
Yeah.
And making my condition probably worse. And I'm jealous of people that can compartmentalize, but I totally feel you, Anthony, and we're glad that you are back to your normal self.
Yeah.
Ben Sender wrote into us and said, hey guys, do you think Sony needs to acquire more studios to keep up in the future with Microsoft? You have talked about Sony getting into the shooter space, but I think it would be interesting to see Sony buy a fighting studio, such as Arc System Works. Thanks for making and keeping Tuesdays great. You're very welcome, Ben. Thank you for your question. We talk about this once in a while, but this is an interesting conversation from a fighting studio aspect. I think the boat has sailed. The ship has sailed with Arc System Works. I think that they might have been buyable a while ago, but they're now publishing their own games, and they're really aggressively pursuing like the Kunio-kun series and these other things that they own, Double Dragon. So I think that they're off the market now. I'm sure everyone's on the market if the price is right, but I don't know that investing in a fighting studio is smart, because even Arc System Works, they are largely or widely considered the best fighting studio in the world, but their games like Guilty Gear and BlazBlue are still pretty niche. I don't know. I still think that there are better studios to buy, but it seems like Sony is being pretty deliberate with the studios it might be identifying. Insomniac was a really awesome purchase, really smart.
Yeah.
But I think when you look at the purchases Microsoft made over the last 2 years, some of them are definitely strange. And I would rather see Sony not, like, they bought the Wasteland developer and they bought Ninja Theory and stuff. Like, I don't really, this stuff doesn't really seem to make any sense to me at all. So I would rather have Sony buy fewer studios that make sense, where you're like, yeah, that's a great purchase. And there are only a few of those teams out there now for me. And I've said over and over again, I think Bluepoint is the one that they really should grab just for the maturation of their ability to funnel repurposed and remade games from their IP through a studio like that. But otherwise, I don't really see too much out there that is begging to be acquired.
Yeah,
personally.
No,
what do you think? Yeah, what do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I would agree. I think I also think like the question is a bit backwards. I think Microsoft has been purchasing all these studios specifically to catch up with Sony. I don't think Sony needs to catch up with Microsoft. I think it's exactly the other way around. I don't really see Sony really begging for much. I think they have all the studios that they really need. I think Guerrilla in particular is a very maybe diverse isn't the right word, but like as far as skill sets go, it's like they're very capable of making like a first person shooter, or they're very capable of making a third person action kind of pseudo RPG. You know, obviously Naughty Dog is really capable at making whatever the hell they want to make, even if they have been pretty preoccupied with The Last of Us Part 2 for God, however many years now. I think they're in a pretty good place. I think it would be smart to focus on a shooter, but I don't think they need to buy a new developer for that.
Yeah, they're experimenting a little bit. Not that it's exactly what people are probably looking for, but with Ilphonic making Predator Hunting Grounds as a second-party game, they are experimenting a little bit with this asymmetric space, which I think is smart, maybe a little late for that, but getting things going on their platform is wise. And the thing that Sony has going, that Microsoft also has going, but I think Sony has it going more, is that many of their studios are working on multiple games at a time. Studio Japan is huge. Guerrilla is working on multiple games at a time. Naughty Dog has been capable in the past of working on multiple games at a time. Sony Santa Monica, the same thing. So they can find a way to kind of get something out of the teams that they have. And it is worth noting that there is such a thing as too much. Like, you don't really need more than, I would say, 3 AAA tentpoles a year from your exclusive teams. And any more than that risks kind of ruining the hype and the buzz around the previous one. And so you can even fill in gaps with second party studios, like Chris is saying. I do think Quantic Dream would have been an interesting studio for them to buy, but I think that relationship soured, obviously, and they're gone now. They're out. So
yeah, they're
working on their own things. So I think that's like, you know, other than that, like maybe Supermassive, but Supermassive now has purportedly an 8-game deal with Bandai Namco. So that's not going to happen. So I really don't know. Housemarque would have been interesting a few years ago, but I don't think that that's the same team anymore. So yeah, I just continue to say that Bluepoint is the team that they should identify. And I really do believe they're going to buy them, but we'll see what happens. All right, let's see here, Chris. Casey Rose wrote in and said, "Hey, post-coital Bliss Colin and cock wrangling Chris." Jesus Christ. With the success of Activision's remake trilogy, such as the Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy and Spyro Reignited Trilogy, do you think we could see Sony do something similar with their older IP, such as Sly Cooper or Jak and Daxter? The Ratchet & Clank remake from 2016 was excellent, and it seems like Sony has been around long enough for there to be some nostalgia surrounding some of these older IP. Thanks, and please continue to manufacture Tuesdays for us. Well, Casey, there already are trilogies that were re-released. Sony was really the studio. People might forget this, but Sony was really the organization that began this entire remake rush for the most part. And it began with Sly Cooper, which you guys might recall came to PS3 as a trilogy about 10 years ago. And Jak and Daxter also came as a trilogy to PS3, re-released, and Ratchet and Clank had a trilogy re-released on PS3. The thing that's interesting about this, though, Chris, is that Sly Cooper was actually ported to Vita, but was never ported to PS4. Jak and Daxter, including Jak X, are all on PS4, so they'll be backwards compatible on PS5. So those are all set. So I think that the only thing that they have to consider here is porting these games again to PS4 or PS5 so that they're more readily available outside of PlayStation Now or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, Casey, these games have already been packaged, trophyized. I mean, the Sly Cooper trilogy especially was huge because people might recall if you 100%ed all 3 Sly Cooper games, you unlocked the trailer for Sly Cooper 4, and it took people weeks to do this, and then they announced Sly Cooper 4 that way. And so it was a cool way for them to also announce something new and exciting for the fans. Is there anything specific that Sony hasn't re-released that you would like to see from their first-party series? I mean, Sly, Jak, and Ratchet seem to be the big ones, but Resistance is the other thing that I'm surprised hasn't been. And by the way, Insomniac will not stop tweeting out pictures of the Chimera.
Yeah, they did it earlier today.
It's fucking insanity. I'm like, I dollars to donuts. That's coming. There can't be, that can't not be happening. You know, with all of this.
That would be a wise launch title, I would think.
That'd be cool.
Yeah,
I love that.
If they put a PS5 launch title with, hey, here's the Resistance trilogy, the Resistance collection or whatever, I think that would be a really smart move. I don't know, man. Like, I think a lot of those games, like you said, they already had re-releases on PlayStation 3. It actually took, the fact that it took so long to get Spyro and Crash is actually the thing that's interesting to me. We have an earthquake going on right now. Oh shit.
Oh.
It's like a really slight one. I felt it under my chair.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was going insane.
Right,
but yeah, man, I think I feel like the PS1 is unique in the sense that a lot of those games just look like nightmares, and they look like just complete monster. They look horrific for the most part. So I think remakes and like re-releases, as far as that goes, as far as those games go, are like really, really necessary. But like, I think the PS2 and the Xbox and GameCube generation specifically has aged pretty good. And I don't know if it's really all that necessary to have like a from the ground up remake of you know, the first Sly Cooper or the first Jack. Like, I just don't see it as necessary. I think an up-res suffices just nicely. I think it minimizes the risk as far as like reinterpreting some assets and reinterpreting the feeling of those games. I think it's just a safer bet in general. It's a lot cheaper. Yeah, I think those generations are separated by a pretty huge degree in visual clarity and, you know, just the general ability to hold up.
Yeah, you're right. And so I think that this unfortunately isolates and alienates certain franchises from really being brought to the new consoles. Like Colony Wars trilogy would never come.
Yeah.
The old Siphon Filter games are never going to come. Stuff like that. But you're right. With the PS2 era, they did a really nice job of up-resing and putting modern kind of resolutions and whatnot into Sly Cooper, into Ratchet already. They did it with God of War. They even ported the God of War PSP games to PS3, as people will recall. Mm-hmm. So those games already exist. I think what's important is to just make sure that those are playable on the new platforms, because those really are benchmark games for the PlayStation brand. And you're right, the Spyro and Crash games were pernicious exclusions for a long time, but it's also worth noting that those are remakes. So like with Ratchet and Clank, there is another Ratchet and Clank game coming, and it's unclear to me if it's actually a remake of the second one or if it's a new one. I hope it's a new one, because like he said in his letter, like Casey said, or she, I don't know if you're a girl or a boy, but they did remake the original Ratchet as that 2016 Ratchet and Clank game, charged $40 for it, which was very wise. It sold extremely well. So we'll see how it all goes. But I think the Resistance trilogy has to happen. And I think that would be especially appealing for two reasons. Number one, Resistance Fall of Man never got trophies. And that's like one of the most sought after trophy games ever.
Yeah.
And number two is that Resistance 2 has horrible trophies, including a 10,000 kill online gold trophy that you can no longer get because the game's not online anymore, but it was like horrifying. I tried for like a few weeks to just play the game and get it. I was like, I think I got like 800, and I'm like, I can't do this anymore. This is fucking nuts. So it would just be cool to get them again with new trappings. Plus Resistance 3 is in my opinion, one of the best first-person shooters ever made. Fucking love that game. Absolutely love it. So it would be a nice lead up to Resistance 4, which I think is maybe possible again.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
It might also be like a really good idea, although I don't know how feasible or even how possible it is. But I know they've been doing a lot of, you know, PC-centric stuff. I know Death Stranding is coming to PC. It'd be interesting if they threw the Resistance trilogy on Steam also.
Yeah, sure. That would be great. I mean, Halo is killing over there.
Yeah, man.
So, yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing that either. That's going to give that people will go into a fucking, you know, another rage like they did when we all found out Horizon was coming to PC, which it is. That hasn't been officially announced, but
if they're making a new Resistance, if they are, I don't know how likely that is, but it would be a good way to get attention on it. I know Resistance never really had a chance to really shine. I think those games are really good, but I think they really did kind of, in the wake of Halo and like Call of Duty coming into its like modern, modern strength, I think it really didn't really get that much of a shot. So it'd be interesting to see it, newly released again.
Yeah, no, it definitely didn't. And they were caught in between a rock and a hard place, Insomniac was, because they wanted Resistance to kind of be like Halo, and they also had to compete internally with Killzone, which I think Sony favored.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And Sony favored it because they own Guerrilla. And so it was a complicated series of political moves inside. And I've talked to people. Resistance 4 was on the table a while ago, and I had a conversation with someone, kind of as a joke, someone in the know there, that was like, "Hey, what do you think about doing Resistance 4?" Like, what? This was a few years ago, not at Insomniac, but at Sony.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "Well, you know how I feel about that, dude. Like, you should do it." All right. Final question comes from Graham Lynch. Says, "Hello, gents. Brand new Patreon subscriber here. Thank you, Graham. Welcome. This is the first and probably only Patreon I will ever support. You have good taste. Kyle and I have been listening to your insightful wisdom since the Beyond days. Chris, you are also a great addition and a funny guy. Have many people considered that Sony may create a type of proprietary storage for the PS5? They have done it before with both the PSP and the Vita. I could see them creating a special type of modular SSD that could be easily interchangeable. The drives could slide quickly in and out of the console and be different sized terabyte capacities. If Sony also repeated past mistakes, they could charge slightly higher prices for the storage, which could help offset any losses that they may or may not take from selling of the console at a loss. This could possibly be a way the console could be sold at that sweet $399 price point. Anyway, I know this is all just conjecture, but what say you nerds? Guys, the PS5 is not going to be $399. You gotta dissuade yourself of that. It's not happening.
Yeah.
But this is an interesting question, Graham. Chris, this strikes me as a mistake, not only because of what Vita did, that helped. The proprietary storage on Vita helped kill it, and that sucked because the Vita's fucking awesome, and they could have just put an SD card in it and called it a day, but they refused to do that. But I just feel like proprietary anything is not a smart idea in the Sony ecosystem because of what that could possibly mean for optics. Mm-hmm. And I think with PS3 Slim and then PS4, you could just use any hard drive that's made for that device, I guess, to put it in there, right? So I don't know why they would go back on that now. I don't think it's smart to make money this way. What do you think?
I'm of two minds about it, because I think consoles specifically have a different, tabletop, proper, home console units have a specifically interesting relationship with proprietary hard drives and proprietary memory storage that doesn't really exist with handheld machines. Like when you had your PS Vita, you pretty much only had one option to save your things, and it was the proprietary way to store your stuff. It was the proprietary SD card that they had, I believe, right?
Yeah,
that was like the problem with
it. And the Vita Slim had like a small hard drive in it.
It
wouldn't. But that was it.
But yeah, so with as far as that goes, it's like you're kind of strong-armed into paying more money for functionality that really should be easily attainable anywhere. Whereas on console, like the Xbox 360 had a proprietary hard drive that you could swap in and swap out, and you could buy new hard drives that were like stronger and faster or whatever. But you also had the opportunity to hook up USB and just use whatever the hell hard drive you wanted to use, in addition to that proprietary hard drive that kind of fit cleanly on your console, didn't create like a buggy, wiry mess that's just sort of hanging off your console like a tumor. So I think it would be wise for them to have some proprietary storage unit and allow you to be like, hey, you know what? If you want to boost the amount of space in your PlayStation 5, there's a proprietary unit that slides right into your console, doesn't need any external it doesn't need an external power source. It doesn't like hang off your console like a weird brick. But also, we're not going to prevent you from adding more storage onto that with external hard drives if you want. I think there's some information going out there right now because we've seen the Xbox Series X and we've seen the machine and we've seen the back of it now. And there is a big slot in the back that looks like it's just about as big. It's just about big enough for an what do you call an SSD to kind of slide in there. And, you know, there's still USB ports, so you can obviously, there's no way that they're going to take that functionality away. So I don't know. I think it wouldn't hurt to have that option, but it would definitely hurt to make it exclusively proprietary. That would be a mistake.
Yeah, that's the thing. Unless they're going to go fully modular with the console, which they're not going to, then you have just like a whole suite of N64 Genesis-like add-ons and attachments that only work for that console, which they got away with back in the day. It really is amazing, actually, that the N64 literally had games that you couldn't play on it without the expansion pack. And like Majora's Mask, Donkey Kong 64 were two examples of that. Donkey Kong 64 actually came with it.
Yeah.
So it's funny that they kind of got away with the ship back in the day, but I think that ship has kind of sailed unless they really cleverly market it in such a way where they're like, this is a thing that's going to be modular. You're going to be able to plug this in and plug this out and take this in and take this out. And it's going to let your console last 10 years and you're going to buy all that stuff through us. Then I think that that's a little more appealing.
Yeah.
But I think just generally speaking, it's just wiser to go to the market and let maybe have your own options, but also let people make their own choices, because that really did kill Vita. And I know that it probably wouldn't be the death knell for PS5, but you need everything possible to help the PS5 right now, because
sure.
Xbox Series X is looking really strong. So
yeah, I think the key is just flexibility, and also just with proprietary stuff. Typically, like, I've had external hard drives connected to pretty much all my consoles for like a really long time. The failure rate on those fucking things, even the good ones, are considerably higher than any proprietary hard drive that I've ever connected to an Xbox 360, than I've ever connected to any other home console that has that option. So if I have the option between an external hard drive that requires its own power source, that needs to hang off my console, that has a pretty likely chance to fail at some point in the near future, or like even just a year down the line, I'm definitely going to choose a proprietary option that fits snugly into my console that I can rely on over it. So the key is just to make that choice more appealing. And I think it already kind of is. Just you really just have to sell that.
Indeed. Very well said. We'll leave it there. Thank you for your question on that. And remember, you can submit your questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas to us on Patreon. Patreon.com/CollinsLastStand. We'd love your support over there. Also access to Sacred Symbols Plus, early ad-free access to this show, etc. We appreciate you. So thanks again for that. Chris, that's all I have for this this week's episode.
All right.
Of Sacred Symbols. It was a good one. Lots of interesting news. Hope everyone enjoyed it. Remember, we were joking around at the top, but do stay safe out there. Wash your hands. Don't touch your face, your eyeballs, your mouth.
Don't talk to anyone.
Just stay inside. I mean, we're very, gamers will rule the world because we are predisposed to isolation. So
yeah,
it's a, just stay safe out there. Just mind your, just wash your hands. I think that goes a long way. Don't sneeze in anyone's mouth.
Yeah, don't do that.
Don't allow anyone to sneeze in your mouth. Those are the important things that you need to do.
Don't date. Don't find love.
Don't find love. Love will, it's just going to hurt you anyway. Just ask Chris and I. You'll just get hurt.
Yeah.
All right. That's it. Chris, be well. Survive the earthquakes. Hopefully there are no aftershocks. I will not miss the earthquakes in California. I don't miss those.
No, I think they're kind of cool.
They're cool until California falls into the ocean. Then they're not so cool anymore.
It's kind of cooler.
What if an asteroid hit Earth that had coronavirus on
it? Oh my God, we'd be in a big state of affairs right there.
Yeah, that'd be biblical.
Yeah,
no doubt. Book of Revelation style death and destruction. But for real, yeah, stay safe out there. Please be well. Be mindful, especially of your elders and anyone with immunodeficiencies in your life, as they are the ones that are going to be hardest hit by this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And we will be here for you. We're not going to miss any episodes unless Chris dies or I die.
Yeah.
So I don't leave the house, so my likelihood of dying is low, but you never really know.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right. We'll see you next time for more Sacred Symbols. Thanks again for your love and kindness. Goodbye.
Take care, guys.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product of and a registered trademark of Collins Last Stand, LLC, and is recorded from Richmond, Virginia and Burbank, California, USA. This show is conceived by, is written by, and is produced by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-host is Chris Raygun. You can find me on Twitter @NoTaxation and on Instagram @CLS Moriarty. Chris is on Twitter at ChrisRGun and on Instagram at Chris_Ray_Gun. Sacred Symbols is edited by Dustin Furman. To message the show online, please use Patreon's DM service. As you know, all of Colin's Last Stand shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/ColinsLastStand. The following names are at the producer level or higher on Patreon, and we are eternally grateful for your kindness, generosity, and fandom. Chris Adams, Carlos Algarit, Morgan Ashley, Saul Balcazar, Taylor Barkley, Martin Beck, Tyler Bello, Mark Boggio, Barrett Boswell, Spencer Brand, Lennon Brixey, Josh Bushing, Austin Bullock, Dylan Burns, Chris Buston, Alex Cabrera, Bjorn Campbell, Patrick Harper, William O'Carroll, Brian Chand, Sean Chandler, David Chestnut, Carter Childs, Rodney Coleman, Simon Conception, Brad Cooley, John Cordero, Gio Corsi, Eric Crane, Philip Crone, Daniel Diamore, Colin Davenport, Night Draft, David Ellis, Jerome Ferreira, Joe Finelli, Eric Finkenbeiner, Jordan Gale, Chris Galvin, Darren Gardner, Connor Gashian, Alex Gates, Michael Gates, Tyler Goodwin, Josh Gravelick, Miranda Grubba, Jonathan H., Eric Harden, Tyler Harris, Richard Hebert III, Kyle Hagel, Wyatt Henry, Robbie Hensley, Scott Hernandez, Blake Israel, Azan Isa Al-Raisi, Josh Yeager, Joshua Jonathan, Paul Joyce, Greg Juliffs, Anton K., Patrick Kelly, Jeremy Key, Auntie Kinnanen, James Kinslow III, Ryan Arkittredge, Bo Clant, Mason Cadillac, Jackson Lastiqua, Don Q. Lee, Jeffrey Leonard, Patrick Leslie, Keith A. Lewis, Chad Lewis, Lou and Ray Loper, Colin Love, Scott Lovelace, Josh M., Kiet Mai, Ryan T. Mandel, Daniel Margaka, Ross Maranka, Matt Martin, Sean Mason, John McCarthy, Josh McKinney, Joe McPartlin, Raul Melendez, Alex Mones, Chris Moore, Betty Ann Moriarty, Ryan Murdoch, Stephen Nieder, Adam Nix, Donnie Nolan, Dan Nolan, George A. Nunez, Jesse Owen, Jorge Palomino, Andrew Parker, Zach Parsley, Daniel Parsons, Todd Paxton, Marius S. Peterson, Gerald Pennington, Matthew Perdue, Enrique Perez, Jason Pettit, Travis Plymal, Jeff Pollard, Lawrence F. Prokop, Nathan R., Ryan Reeves, Peter Reynolds, Shane Rayum, Jonathan Rice, Petro Rose, A.G. Rowe, Jose Salinas, John Schultz, Michael Shanholtz, Toby Shootman, Gregory Slavinsky, Joshua Smallwood, Ahmad Tamar, Ben Thompson, Carl Tolman, Alan Trembley, Daniel Vale, Michael Vecchio, Oakley Waldron, Justin Wagaman, Isaac Wastman, Damon Weathers, Mike Wayant, David Wright, Corey Wyatt, Tony Zuniga, Casual Misfits Gaming, Homeworld Hub, Vexius, Throw7, McDog18, Infinite, Boots, Organic Produce, Madmock Media, Bloody Fang, Mubarak, Richter86, Hugo's Desk, Of Fortuna, Andrew, Ian, Gamer Filmaholic, Megadet, and Rainick.